What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 9 of chapter 221 Risk Advertisement. Boom. The place where the mace hit made a huge sound, and the dust seemed to be afraid of this force and rushed to disperse. A hole nearly 10 meters in diameter appeared in the original place. Blackbeard looked at this scene with lingering fear and said, "They're all monsters." He was moved to a building, with a reddish-brown pulpy cake under his feet, which looked as disgusting as crushing a human brain. He shook the cake off his feet, and then watched the battle between Bullet and Big Mom. "I should only be able to talk about you. You seem to be different from before. Stop talking nonsense, I must teach you a lesson today." If it were Swain who came today, she might not feel so aggrieved inside, even if she was beaten by a new king. But Bullet is different. Both of them belong to the old age. At that time, when she followed rocks to dominate the sea, the age difference between the two was only 10 years. Now looking at Bullet who is still in his prime, she feels somewhat jealous. If I were 10 years younger. As she thought about rocks, she turned to Bullet and said, "You know there's a new guy with a last name that's connected to that guy. You don't need to remind me. When the time comes, I will go and meet that boy." The ant grinned at this time and said, "I remember how miserable you were bullied back then. Being beaten in public." Before she could finish her words, Bullet suddenly appeared in front of her and punched her in the face. Before Auntie's body flew backwards, his other fist wrapped Conqueror's Haki around his hand and hit Auntie's abdomen hard. "I hate it when people mention this," Bullet said with a gloomy expression. "Ah, it hurts so much." The ant rolled on the ground in pain. Due to her constitution, her body is as hard as steel. Even if an ordinary person cuts her with a knife for a long time, she may not be able to seriously hurt her. Bullet is naturally not an ordinary person. His fists are wrapped with conquerors and he is very skilled. The damage to her directly penetrates the skin and injures the internal organs. Spit. She spat out a mouthful of blood. He stood up with difficulty, not discarding the mace in his hand. "Ha ha ha ha, well, the ant laughed. "It seems that you have always been worried about this matter. You'd better shut up, or I'll cut out your tongue," Bullet said angrily. The stronger a person is, the more he cares about his reputation. Roger and Rox were both famous pirates at the time. Naturally, a lot of conflicts broke out between the two forces. Rox was extremely powerful, and Roger was completely suppressed in a one-on-one fight. Bullet had just boarded the ship not long ago, and he didn't know how powerful Rox was. In order to show his strength and status on the ship, he rashly attacked Rox. Not surprisingly, he was no match at all. Good thing. Rox appreciated his strength and talent and did not kill him out of love for his talent, but instead hung him up and spanked him in public. This humiliation can be said to be the darkest stain in Bullet's life. As long as someone mentioned this matter, he would be so angry that he would definitely kill that person. Those who knew about this back then have all entered their old age, and some have completely secluded themselves from the world and no longer become pirates. Now the ant actually wants to mention this matter in public. How could this not make him angry? I wish I could seal her mouth immediately. "I know you haven't forgotten this matter, and so have I," Auntie mocked without caring about his feelings. "If you don't want to become a laughingstock in this sea, then give me all Blackbeard's gang. Kill them all." "You think I'll believe you?" Bullet asked. The ant looked at Bullet with sharp eyes, shrugged and said, "Then you will know if you try it." Bullet was speechless for a while, then turned to face Blackbeard and the others. They were having a fierce fight with other members of Big Mom, and they didn't know what was going on here. Only Fanoka was assisting his crew in fighting while also keeping an eye on Bullet. He never forgot Bullet, playing him like prey. Advertisement. The seeds of hatred had already taken root at that moment. "Captain, something doesn't seem right about that Bullet guy." Fanoka teleported to Blackbeard's side and said. Just when Blackbeard turned his head that way, Bullet suddenly turned around at an extremely fast speed and punched the ant, causing her face to become distorted. The latter still couldn't figure out what was going on, and his body flew out like a kite with broken strings. It stopped after knocking down more than a dozen buildings in a row. The ant looked at Bullet with blurry eyes and said something unclear, but she passed out before she finished speaking. "Mother, Mom, what's wrong with you?" The members of Big Mom's pirate group immediately gave up the enemy in front of them and surrounded Big Mom. "Great," Blackbeard suddenly cheered. "As long as the captain of each pirate group is defeated, the morale will almost plummet. Go quickly. Take Mom with you," someone directed. "Go east." Whoosh. Before he could finish speaking, he was shot to death. Following the sound of the gunshot, it was Fanoka who fired the gun, because he blew on the hot air from the muzzle. Now there is no one to maintain this chaos. Blackbeard smiled scornfully. "Let's go on a killing spree. Good, kill, kill, kill," Badgers laughed. Bullet looked at the ant with cold eyes, as if looking at a dead body. He murmured, "I told you would die here today." Chirp. The figure flashed to the ant's side. "Get out of my way, all the trash," he scolded. His conqueror's domineering power was fully activated, and a scarlet aura washed over those who stood in front of him. For a moment, only a dozen people stood tremblingly. But the ant's body was too big, and she couldn't carry her for a while. After a while, only scattered people were left standing on the spot. "You should have died, Charlotte Linlin." Bullet used the fruit's power to condense a sharp awl and was about to pierce her head. Cut. Cut, rice cake. Dividing line, no need to read the following, jump directly to the next chapter. The Chinese national culture is like a majestic building. After thousands of years of wind and rain, it still stands tall and exudes a unique and bright light. It is the soul and foundation of the Chinese nation, carrying our history, wisdom, emotions and spiritual pursuits. The Chinese national culture has a long history, is extensive and profound. From ancient oracle bone inscriptions to today's simplified Chinese characters, the inheritance of writing has witnessed the continuation of civilization. As early as the pre-Qin period, the ideological debates of hundreds of schools of thought laid a profound philosophical foundation for Chinese culture. The Confucian benevolence and etiquette, the Taoist natural inaction, and the Mohist idea of universal love and non-aggression still have an impact on our values today, has a profound impact. Literature and art are even more colorful. The Book of Songs and Songs of Chu opened a glorious chapter in poetry. Tang poems, song lyrics, and Yuan operas shine like stars in the sky of literature. There are also magnificent ancient buildings and exquisite traditional crafts, melodious national music, calligraphy and painting with both form and spirit, all make people intoxicated and feel the unique aesthetics and creativity of the Chinese nation. The Chinese national culture contains rich values and moral concepts. The idea of harmony is precious, advocates harmonious coexistence, which is not only reflected in the relationship between people, but also in the relationship between people, nature and society. Do not do to others what you do not want others to do to you, embodies respect and care for others and is an important principle in interpersonal communication. The sky moves vigorously, and a gentleman strives for self-improvement, inspires people to move forward and keep making progress. The terrain is turbulent, and a gentleman carries great virtues, teaches people to be broad-minded and tolerant. These values have shaped the tenacity, kindness, diligence, and wisdom of the Chinese nation and have become the internal driving force for our nation to continue to advance. The Chinese national culture has a strong sense of cohesion and identity. Common culture is the bond that maintains national emotions. No matter where they are, Chinese people can find their spiritual belonging through culture. Traditional festivals such as the Spring Festival, Dragon Boat Festival, and Mid-Autumn Festival carry people's expectations for reunion and happiness and have become the sustenance of national emotions. Regional cultural characteristics such as dialects, customs, and folktales allow us to feel the common roots amidst our differences. In the long history, the Chinese nation has gone through countless hardships and obstacles, but the power of culture has always brought us together tightly, allowing us to maintain a high degree of recognition of our national identity. The Chinese national culture continues to develop through exchanges and integration with world cultures. The ancient Silk Road witnessed the exchanges and mutual learning between Chinese culture and foreign cultures. The introduction of Buddhism enriched the connotation of Chinese culture. In modern times, with the development of globalization, Chinese culture has collided with the cultures of other countries in the world and learned from each other with an open attitude. We have absorbed the outstanding achievements of Western science, technology, management experience, etc., and at the same time spread the charm of Chinese culture to all parts of the world. This exchange and integration not only enriches Chinese culture itself, but also makes important contributions to the diversity of world cultures. However, in today's society, Chinese national culture also faces many challenges. The impact of modernization, the influence of Western culture and the erosion of some bad ideological trends have all posed threats to the inheritance and development of traditional culture. Some traditional skills are in danger of being lost, and some traditional values are being questioned and challenged. We must have a clear understanding and attach great importance to this. We must strengthen the protection and inheritance of Chinese national culture. Increase the protection of cultural heritage and ensure the continuation of precious cultural heritage through legislation, financial investment and other measures. Pay attention to the role of education, incorporate traditional culture into the education system, let the younger generation contact and understand traditional culture from an early age, and cultivate their love and identity for national culture. At the same time, it is necessary to encourage folk cultural groups and individuals to actively participate in cultural inheritance activities and create a good atmosphere for the whole society to pay attention to and participate in. We also need to promote the innovation and development of Chinese national culture. On the basis of inheriting tradition, combined with the needs of the times and scientific and technological progress, we continue to give new connotations and forms to traditional culture. Use modern communication methods, such as the internet, multimedia, etc., to present traditional culture to people in a more attractive way. Encourage the development of cultural and creative industries, integrate traditional cultural elements into modern design and artistic creation, and create more cultural products with national characteristics and flavor of the times. In addition, international cultural exchanges should be strengthened. Actively participate in international cultural activities, hold cultural exhibitions, performances, etc., to show the charm of Chinese national culture to the world. At the same time, we should also actively introduce outstanding foreign cultural achievements to promote mutual learning and common progress of cultures. Through cultural exchanges, we can enhance people's understanding and friendship with the Chinese nation and enhance the international influence of Chinese culture. The Chinese national culture is our precious wealth and a solid foundation for our future. We must inherit and carry forward the Chinese national culture with a high sense of responsibility and mission, make this cultural edifice more glorious and magnificent, and provide strong spiritual power and cultural support for the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. Let us work together to write a new chapter of Chinese national culture and let Chinese culture shine more dazzlingly on the world stage. It is one of the important qualities of traditional Chinese virtues, which emphasizes fairness, justice, fairness and decency. At the social level, fairness means that citizens can abide by laws and regulations and maintain social fairness and justice. They can respect the rights and interests of others and do not discriminate or oppress others. They can actively participate in social governance and promote social fairness and justice. Justice is the guarantee of social stability and can promote social harmony and development. In short, Chinese traditional virtues are the spiritual pillar and cultural treasure of the Chinese nation. They cover many aspects such as personal cultivation, family ethics, and social morality, and play an important role in promoting the development and progress of the Chinese nation. In today's society, we should inherit and promote traditional Chinese virtues, integrate them into our daily lives and work, constantly improve our moral quality and civilization level, and contribute to the realization of the Chinese dream of the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. Culture is the treasure of the Chinese nation. It carries our history, wisdom, and emotions, and is an important manifestation of our national spirit. We must cherish and inherit this precious wealth, continuously promote its innovative development, so that it can radiate new vitality and charm in the new era, and make greater contributions to the progress of human civilization. Chapter 222 Asking for Help Advertisement, Cut the Rice Cake, Katakuri shouted loudly. His arms turned into rice cakes and expanded. After transforming into a mace-like shape, he rotated at high speed with the armament of Haki and struck like a meteor hammer. After Bullet took a quick look, he stamped his feet on the ground. A huge 2-meter-high stone flew in front of him. Using his abilities and weapons, it immediately became as solid as a rock. Boom! Katakuri's last-ditch move only left a small hole in it. So strong, Katakuri thought to himself. He quickly jumped out of Bullet's attack range with his ant on his back. Bree, take Mom and run. Okay. After receiving Katakuri's order, Bree quickly came to Big Mom's side and put her into the mirror world. Katakuri's health was not optimistic either. The intense exercise just now had loosened his injuries again, and the white gauze was stained red again. What are you going to do? Bree exclaimed, with a look of anxiety on her face. Because after Katakuri threw Big Mom to her, he turned around and went back. She wanted to help her brother, but in the blink of an eye she was caught by badgers of the Blackbeard pirates. Gia, release Auntie quickly, then kneel down and beg me to spare your life. You. She suddenly bit the back of Badger's hand hard, and her sharp fangs penetrated into his hand with a pop. You little b*ch. Badgers cursed. Lift 1,000 caddies of strength. The palm gathered so much power that it almost pulled off Bree's head. Bree. Katakuri wanted to save her. Bullet snorted coldly and said, You dare to be distracted while fighting with me, you should just worry about yourself. His long, thick legs were pulled out like a whip, hitting him right on the wound originally left in Wano country. Poof! He spat out a mouthful of blood. The arrow left his body and crashed straight into the attic. He didn't have time to cry out in pain. Thinking that his sister and mother were still alive, he wanted to save them even more. But he felt that his vision was blurred, and his body was swaying and he could not stabilize at all, so he had to kneel down halfway. Puff puff. He spat out a few more mouthfuls of blood, and quickly covered his mouth with his hands. If he lost more blood, he would definitely faint, and if he was unlucky, he might die here. He had no choice but to use the fruit's power to create glutinous rice to plug the wound, and there was no other way for him. As for Bree, although she had received a terrifying slap just now, luckily she used her armor to protect the upper half of her face in time. The lower half of his face was almost invisible, and all his teeth were almost gone. She felt that she was going to be disfigured again, and looked at Badgers with a fierce look in her eyes. You b*ch, who gave you the courage to look directly at me? Badgers felt cruel and was ready to twist off her head. He doesn't like this Lion Majesty look, because he might bite you in the back at any time. He has actually suffered a loss in this regard. Just when he was about to take action, a male voice sounded. Pretzels. Cracker rotates the sword in his hand at high speed, adds armed Haki and thrusts forward towards Badgers, launching a spiral sword energy, which is extremely powerful. Whoosh! The sound of the sword cutting through the air was heard. Badgers didn't have time to defend himself, and the hand-holding Bree was cut off. Suddenly, blood gurgled. After Badgers screamed, he endured the pain and stayed away from Cracker. Thank you, Bree said gratefully. Advertisement, get out of here quickly and take Mom with you, quick, Cracker ordered. Although the two of them don't usually interact much, they still have to work together to do something at critical moments. Otherwise, this difficulty cannot be overcome at all, not to mention that even if we work together, we may not be able to escape. Auntie was a flag. When she fell, everyone felt a knife hanging above their heads. That sense of security and fearlessness was completely torn to pieces, like a naked woman standing in front of a vicious wolf. Kill! Blackbeard ordered. As his voice fell, Poison Q took the lead and rode on a white horse majestically throwing poison fruits and gas downwards. On the originally beautiful Cake Island, gunpowder smoke filled the air like a thick curtain, and the strong and pungent smell was suffocating. The shouts of killing, the sound of gunfire, and the sound of explosions were intertwined and deafening, as if they were about to tear the whole world apart. The soil was splashed everywhere by the shells, forming huge craters, and there were still bloodstains on the charred land. The pirates on the Malaysian side shuttled through the smoke, and their figures were sometimes blurry and sometimes clear. Some charged into battle, with fearless light shining in their eyes. Some fell in a pool of blood, their limbs twisted, and their lives disappeared in an instant. Thick smoke billowed from the burning house, and the firelight reflected the faces of the pirates covered with sweat and dust. The cries of the wounded echoed across the battlefield as they desperately dragged them back. Katakuri watched helplessly as his home was destroyed, and he was seriously injured and unable to save himself. Every time bullet passes through a place, dozens of lives are lost. Suddenly, he saw a dying figure whose injuries were as serious as his own. Is it him? Katakuri asked in surprise. One of Luo's arms had been broken. He bit the broken hand with his teeth, and then quickly dodged the damage. Could it be? He suddenly remembered that when he returned to Cake Island, he was nearly comatose due to his serious injuries. When I saw my aunt for the last time, I vaguely heard a sentence, I want to have peace talks with Swain. It seems that Luo accidentally broke into Blackbeard's sneak attack. The captain who was protecting the calf should be very angry with such a serious injury, right? Katakuri then immediately called over one of his men who was running around. Come here. Do you know who I am? The man with the horse head and body nodded tremblingly. I want you to find a place where you can communicate immediately, and Swain said 4 emperors, there are threats to his crew here. No, just say that Bullet joined forces with the Blackbeard pirates to destroy the harmony between Big Mom and the Swain pirates, and the ship's doctor, Luo, was seriously injured and his life or death is unknown. Please ask for their reinforcements. After Katakuri said such a long sentence, he was so tired that he took a big breath. Then he grabbed his subordinate's head and said, do you understand? Okay. Then he had to stand up tremblingly and walked in Luo's direction. I want to make this matter bigger. Kill Luo. Let Swain mess with those guys. Dividing line. Chinese poetry is like a bright pearl, shining with a unique and charming light in the long river of Chinese culture. It carries the wisdom, emotion and spirit of the Chinese nation and is a treasure of our national culture. Appreciating Chinese poetry is a spiritual journey through time and space, allowing us to appreciate the feelings, wisdom and aesthetic taste of the ancients. Chinese poetry has extremely high artistic value. Its language is beautiful and concise, expressing rich and profound connotations in concise and vivid words. The poet creates various artistic conceptions through the skillful use of imagery, rhetoric and other techniques, making readers feel as if they are immersed in the scene and feel the scenes and emotions depicted in the poem. For example, Wang Wei's, the solitary smoke is straight in the desert, and the sun is setting in the long river, which outlines the magnificent scene of the vast desert in just 10 words, giving people a strong visual impact, while Li Bai's, flying water flows down 3,000 feet, suspected to be the Milky Way falling from the 9 heavens, uses an exaggerated technique to describe the majestic momentum of the Lucian waterfall, which is breathtaking. The beauty of the rhythm of poetry is also its unique charm. Chinese poetry pays attention to rhythms such as level, opposition, and rhyme. It is catchy to read, full of rhythm and music. This kind of rhythmic beauty not only enhances the artistic appeal of poetry, but also makes it easier for people to remember and recite. For example, Wang Zhawan's, climbing the Stork Tower, the sun is over the mountains, and the yellow river flows into the sea. If you want to see 1,000 miles away, go to a higher level. The whole poem has neat counterpoints, harmonious rhymes, and endless charm when reading, and has become a poem that has been passed down through the ages. Famous quotes. Chinese poetry contains rich emotions. Poets express their feelings and thoughts about life, love, friendship, nature and many other aspects through poetry. Some poems are full of praise for nature, such as Meng Horn's, Spring Dawn. Spring sleeps without realizing the dawn, and I hear birds singing everywhere. The sound of wind and rain at night, I know how many flowers have fallen. This poem is described with fresh and natural brushwork. It depicts the beautiful scene of spring morning and expresses the poet's love for spring and cherishing life. Some poems express the poet's patriotic feelings, such as Wen Tianxiang's, crossing the Lingding Ocean. Since ancient times, no one has died, but he has retained his loyalty. According to history, reflects the poet's firm belief in seeing death as home and sacrificing his life for the country. Other poems express the poet's cherishment of family and friendship, such as Wang Wei's, remembering Shandong brothers on September 9th, being alone in a foreign land is a foreign country. Guests, I miss my relatives even more during the festive season. I know that my brothers are climbing high, and one of them is missing. This poem profoundly expresses the poet's longing for his relatives in his hometown. Appreciating Chinese poetry can also let us understand the history, culture and social life of ancient China. Poetry is a mirror of the times, reflecting the social scene, political system, customs and habits of the time. By reading poetry, we can understand the lifestyle, values and aesthetic standards of the ancients. For example, Du Fu's Shihao Li reflects the suffering life of the people during the Anxi rebellion in the Tang dynasty by describing the scene of Shihao officials catching people at night, while Su Shi's Shui Diao Zhe Tu, When Will the Bright Moon Come, reflects the literati of the Song dynasty. Life interest and ideological realm. In the process of appreciating Chinese poetry, we can use a variety of methods. First of all, we must deeply understand the literal meaning of the poem and grasp its theme and emotion. This requires us to have a certain knowledge of ancient Chinese and literary literacy, and to be able to accurately interpret the words, allusions, etc. in the poems. Secondly, we should pay attention to feeling the artistic conception and atmosphere of the poems. Through imagination and association, you can put yourself in the scene described in the poem and experience the poet's emotions and state of mind. In addition, the poems can also be understood based on the poet's life experience and historical background. Understanding the poet's life experiences and creative background can help us better understand the connotation and meaning of poetry. At the same time, we can also appreciate Chinese poetry through various ways. Reading classic poetry anthologies, poetry collections, etc. is the most basic method. In addition, you can also participate in poetry lectures, seminars and other activities to exchange ideas and experiences with other poetry lovers. Watch poetry recitations, poetry performances and other programs to feel the artistic charm of poetry. Use modern information technology such as the internet to review poetry materials and appreciate them. Poetry videos, etc. The beauty of poetry lies first in the refinement and flexibility of its language. A few words can outline a vivid picture and convey endless meaning. The sand in the desert is like snow, and the moon in Yanshan Mountain is like a hook. In just 10 words, the magnificence of the vast desert and the poignancy of the cold moonlight are vividly displayed. 2 orioles sing in the green willows, and a row of egrets ascend to the blue sky. With fresh and bright colors, the sentence depicts the vitality of spring. The subtlety of poetic language also lies in the precision and ingenuity of its wording. The change of one word can often cause a huge change in the artistic conception of the entire poem. For example, the word green in Wang Anshi's spring breeze turns green on the south bank of the river vividly depicts the scene of spring breeze blowing across the land of the south of the Yangtze River, reviving vegetation and full of greenery, and has become a famous sentence through the ages. The philosophies of life contained in Tang poetry and song lyrics, such as, if you want to see 1,000 miles away, reach a higher level, if you don't know the true face of Mount Lu, you just want to be here at Yamanaka, etc., give us inspiration and thinking. Poetry inherits the excellent cultural traditions of the Chinese nation and is an important way for us to understand and inherit Chinese culture. Appreciating poetry not only allows us to enjoy beauty, but also cultivates our sentiments and improves our humanistic qualities. When we recite those beautiful poems, our souls will become purer and richer, and our emotions will become more delicate and keen. Poetry can help us find a peaceful spiritual home in the impetuous modern society, making our lives more fulfilling and meaningful. Let us immerse ourselves in the ocean of Chinese poetry and savor the beauty of its language, the depth of emotion, the wonder of artistic conception, and the richness of culture. In the world of poetry, we will appreciate the great wisdom and unique charm of the Chinese nation, and feel the profoundness and long history of Chinese culture. Let the light of poetry always illuminate our hearts and accompany us through every stage of life. In short, Chinese poetry is an endless treasure waiting for us to discover and appreciate. By appreciating Chinese poetry, we can cultivate our sentiments, improve our aesthetic taste, and enrich our spiritual world. Let us enter the world of Chinese poetry, appreciate its unique charm, and feel the cultural heritage and spiritual connotation of the Chinese nation. In today's era of globalization, Chinese poetry, as an important part of the excellent traditional culture of the Chinese nation, is of great significance in enhancing national cohesion and enhancing the country's cultural soft power. We should inherit and carry forward Chinese poetry culture and let this bright pearl shine more dazzlingly on the stage of world culture. Chapter 223 Thrilling Advertisement. Blue brew brew bee, the phone in the office rang. Swain was thinking about who was the mastermind of this matter, so he thoughtfully picked up the phone and answered it. Hello. Is this Mr. Swain? As soon as Swain picked up the phone, the other party started asking impatiently. Yes, I am Swain. He also heard some gunshots and shouts of death from the phone bug, which instantly made him smell something bad. Your ship's doctor, Mr. Luo, is now given to him by the combination of Bullet and Blackbeard. Toot toot toot. The call was cut off. This made him a little anxious, and then he called back. Someone answered, but after 2 beeps it became quiet. Swain had a bad feeling in his heart. He was afraid that Luo might encounter some danger during the negotiations. Bullet. This name is very familiar to him. He is an extremely strong man who has traveled from the old era to the new era. He is also very familiar with Blackbeard. A sinister villain will do anything to get what he wants, even if he kills his compatriots, he will not hold back. Are these 2 people getting together? Swain instantly thought of what they were going to do. Afraid that he was going to overthrow Big Mom's 4 Emperor's throne, but he happened to be bumped into by Luo, who was going to negotiate. In order to ensure the normal operation of the plan, he could only be killed? No, Blackbeard has the treacherous heart but not the treacherous courage. Even if he overthrows Big Mom, he must have time to warm the seat under his butt, right? If he really killed Luo, he must know that he would pursue him at all costs. Blackbeard is not that stupid. He has seen how hard his fist is and how terrifying his strength is. At this stage, he has absolutely no power to fight. Even if Bullet insists on killing Luo, he will definitely stop it. There is no need for Blackbeard to joke with the lives of all the crew members. He has no capital to bear it. Thinking of this, Swain felt a little relaxed. As long as he hadn't seen Luo's body with his own eyes, he must still be alive. Roland. Is the boat to Cake Island ready? Swain shouted to the door. Okay, you can leave now. Then Swain gave another order. Let the Red Count keep an eye on this place and don't let any organization know where I am going. This matter is a top secret. Who is the Red Earl? Roland asked with confusion. In fact, few of our own people know much about the assassination organization Yi Yi Shao, mainly because they are afraid of causing panic among their subordinates. Swain gave Roland a chest talisman. Take this. Then he disappeared from the same place, and when he reappeared, he was already on a boat at sea. Luo must not die. He knew very well what role the other party played in his own power. If he was compared to an emperor, then Luo was a shrewd and capable prime minister. And the other person is also his closest companion. Wait for me, Swain said. Cake Island. Although he is a doctor, he cannot heal his arm at this time because it is too late. The battle has become one-sided. Blackbeard's side is a one-sided massacre, completely transformed into a killing machine. As long as they pass by, there will be corpses everywhere. Advertisement: this battlefield has become a meat grinder. I'm afraid it's hard to escape now, Luo panted. As soon as he stopped the bleeding in his arm, a Big Mom crew member rushed towards him and wanted to kill him. Room. He flicked it with his fingers, and the man's head fell off. It's just that he's not dead yet. He can still open his mouth to speak, but the fear in his eyes can't be concealed. Hey, that boy, suddenly a voice shouted to Luo. Isn't that strong man from the Lunaria clan here? If you think that killing me will divert Swain's hatred, then I believe your idea is very dangerous. Seeing that he was about to take action again, Luo quickly dissuaded him. Room slaughterhouse. He turned around subconsciously and suddenly predicted from what he saw and heard that his head was going to be split in half. His body stagnated, and then he half knelt on the ground. We can't fight this madman, we must get rid of him. Katakori's injuries were too serious, and it was already his limit to be able to hold on to this point. Suddenly, as long as the strong people are not narrow-minded and have sympathy for each other, he would like to have another hearty battle, even though he is not an opponent at all. Clang. You don't know that man, he's very smart. Luo is not dead yet. He stood up with difficulty and stumbled to walk forward. Really? Katakori responded calmly. This was a heroic way to die, but the current situation did not allow him to do so. Katakori's arms quickly grew longer. How will you know if you don't try? Katakori did not answer, but asked. Luo and cursed. Would it be ********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** He immediately turned around and left because he saw Blackbeard returning. "You can't escape," Katakuri said coldly from behind. "Why?" Luo looked around and saw that it was almost a ruins with no shelter. Luo mobilized all his strength and took his scalpel into his hand. Luo only had one arm, and before he had time to adapt, another powerful enemy appeared. His figure immediately moved away. It seemed that Luo had escaped. Whoosh! If he continues like this, he will die in another way, by bleeding out the last drop of blood. As of now, doesn't our cooperation outweigh our hostility? When Luo saw Katakuri avoiding the topic, he knew what he meant and said solemnly, "I believe if he came today, you would definitely die here." Luo used the force of the counter shock to jump far away and asked in confusion. There was a sound of metal colliding, and there were quite a few sparks when the two knives collided together. Glutinous Bomb. Chapter 224 Rescue, Advertisement. "It's really raining all night long," Luo couldn't help but said angrily. When Blackbeard returned to look for Luo, Van Oka was also with him. This immediately reminded him of what happened when he first arrived on the island. Turned out to be. When Luo's negotiation ship first arrived here, they saw Blackbeard's pirate group docked at the port. The two of them actually came together in tandem, so it was inevitable that they would meet. Swain and Blackbeard were naturally mortal enemies, and Blackbeard just pretended that Luo didn't know and approached him to greet him. But who could have known that there was actually a strong man from the old era hiding in this ship? After a fierce battle, he was defeated and one of Luo's arms was cut off. But he is a doctor and a person with the ability to get the result of the operation. It is easy for him to put the arm back. But he didn't have that time at all, and these people didn't give him a chance. We must find a way to contact the boss as soon as possible, Luo thought. He hid behind a pile of dead people and tried to cover his body. Swain is like an arrow leaving the string, with his abilities fully activated and his speed reaching the extreme. At this moment, he looked at his watch nervously, his heart sank, there was not much time left, however, he did not flinch and looked ahead firmly. It didn't take long for him to come to the Cake Island. It seems like we are in a terrible hell. Looking around, there are creepy corpses everywhere. The air was filled with a strong smell of death, which seemed to be emanating from the stiff corpses, making people feel chilly. Each corpse fell to the ground in various twisted postures, as if telling the pain and torture they experienced during their lives. Some corpses looked hideous, as if they were full of fear and despair at the moment of death. Some corpses showed a strange silence, as if they had accepted their fate. The ground was dyed dark red with blood, and the smell of blood filled the entire space, making it almost impossible to breathe. In this hellish scene, there is no trace of life, only death and despair. Everything here makes people feel extremely frightened and depressed, as if the whole world has sunk into the abyss of darkness. In the void, the giants made of seawater and the black-armed giants had a fierce battle. Every collision between them caused an earth-shattering noise, as if the whole world was trembling. Swain did not hesitate and immediately rushed towards the direction of the sound without stopping. Swain's voice was like muffled thunder, making people's ears hurt. As the sound gradually became clearer, he realized that it was the sound of fighting coming from far away. No, if you listen carefully, it should be said that it was the sound of a chase. When Swain saw this scene in front of him, the anger in his heart burst out like a volcano. Luo's expression looked very tired, but his eyes still showed determination and unyielding. He clenched his teeth, as if he was ready to face the coming death. Advertisement. When Swain saw this scene, he was extremely angry. Blackbeard, you are playing with fire. Swain's roar echoed through the sky, and his conqueror's domineering power also burst out at this moment. Behind him are huge waves, surging and surging, like an invincible god of war, majestic and domineering. Swain's eyes were blazing. He knew that such an attack would not cause substantial harm to Bullet, so he simply stopped. HMPH, boy, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Bullet stood up, his body tall and proud, exuding an unparalleled powerful aura. HMPH, boy, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Both of them are top powerhouses, and every move they make is like thunder, carrying the power to destroy the world. The aftermath of the fight swept around like a raging tsunami, shattering everything around it. He widened his eyes and looked at his companion in disbelief. He was tortured so horribly that one of his arms was broken. His heart was full of self-blame and regret, and he kept blaming himself. However, the fierce fighting did not stop. Under Swain's control, the seawater gathered like living life, and in the blink of an eye it transformed into a huge giant composed of seawater. Swain's conqueror's domineering power burst out, with huge waves behind him, like an invincible god of war. He used his fruit ability to use all the weapons on the ground to form a huge wall to resist Swain's huge waves. This kind of scene can only make him think of this thought. Bullet was naturally not to be outdone. He went all out, and the giant wall also changed, transforming into a giant wearing black armor. A cold light shone outside its body, as if it were indestructible. Blackbeard, you are playing with fire. You can't escape. Blackbeard let out a hearty laugh, his voice echoing in the air, carrying a chilling and intimidating force. Then, Bullet showed no sign of weakness. He used his fruit ability and used all the weapons on the ground. As if given life, these weapons quickly gathered together to form a huge wall to resist Swain's huge waves. However, the anger did not make Swain lose his mind. His voice sounded like muffled thunder, making people's ears hurt. When he got closer, he finally saw the scene in front of him clearly. Sure enough, Blackbeard discovered Luo's traces, and a sly smile appeared on his ferocious face. Suddenly, a faint sound came into his ears. At first, he couldn't determine what the sound was, and he only felt an inexplicable tension rising in his heart. Bullet joined attack. When Swain saw this, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes, but he did not flinch. He took a deep breath and activated Conqueror's Haki with all his strength. The huge waves became more turbulent and hit the huge wall crazily. He could only blame himself. I saw Bullet standing up, his body tall and proud. It towers into the clouds and is extremely majestic, and every movement is accompanied by surging power. The huge wall underwent an astonishing change in an instant. Like a giant bullet, it abruptly divided the surging waves at an unexpected angle. Seeing Swain's momentum, Blackbeard raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a disdainful smile. His companion was almost tortured to death, and one of his arms was broken. His heart sank and he said, "Is it really too late?" Chapter 225 Battle Advertisement. Boy, you are very strong, Bullet praised sincerely. This was the first time he encountered a well-matched opponent since he escaped from the prison in Shencheng. Swain had no time to talk nonsense with him. He saw a blue ring quickly appear in his palm, shining with brilliance. He slapped it hard, and an extremely powerful shockwave hit Bullet like a raging wave. What? Bullet couldn't help but exclaimed, with shock written all over his face. He quickly dodged sideways, moving as quickly as a cheetah. However, Swain was even faster than him. His figure was as fast as lightning, and only a residual shadow could be seen, appearing behind Bullet in an instant. I don't know what you are doing here, but I have something important to do now, so please get as far away from me as possible. Swain's cold voice seemed to come from the Nine Nether Hell. Boom. Swain suddenly struck out with a heavy punch. The blow was like thunder, with an overwhelming force. This time Bullet failed to dodge, and his back forcefully withstood the blow. His body flew backwards like a kite with its string broken. In the air, Bullet's expression was distorted by pain, his eyes widened, and his face was filled with disbelief. Swain, on the other hand, stood quietly, his eyes cold and firm, as if telling the other person that this was his strength. As Bullet's body fell heavily to the ground, the entire ground trembled. Swain walked towards him step by step, each step carrying unparalleled pressure, as if he was a messenger from hell. Damn it. This kid is so incredibly strong, Bullet said to himself in great surprise. His eyes were fixed on the seemingly weak figure in front of him, and there was an indescribable shock in his heart. In the fierce confrontation just now, Bullet had already felt Swain's power firsthand. At this moment, he quickly rolled to his feet with quick and neat movements. After putting some distance between him and Swain, he stared at the other party with vigilance, concentrating on him and not daring to relax at all. Bullet took a deep breath, adjusted his breathing and state, and prepared for the next possible battle. His eyes were firm and cold, as if he was declaring his determination and courage to his opponents. However, what Bullet never expected was that Swain seemed not to want to continue fighting with him at all. His performance made Bullet very confused, and he didn't understand why the other party suddenly did this. Is there some conspiracy? Such thoughts flashed through Bullet's mind. He began to carefully observe Swain's every move, trying to find out Swain's thoughts from the other party's subtle expressions and movements. Luo's physical condition was very bad, and even a strong man could not sustain it for a long time when losing a lot of blood. Even Swain found it difficult to do this. Last time he fought against Saint Satan, one of the 5 elders, who still had the ability to regenerate, but he died on the spot due to blood loss that was difficult to replenish. He flashed and came to Luo's side as quickly as lightning, and asked softly and concernedly, "How are you?" His voice was full of anxiety and worry. "Let's go." Luo squeezed out the word through his teeth with difficulty, his tone revealing a firmness. "Okay, I'll take you away right now," Swain responded quickly, his eyes tightly locked on Luo Na's pale face, and his heart was filled with anxiety. Advertisement. He clearly saw that Luo's condition was very bad, as if he might completely faint at any time. Once he becomes unconscious, he may really face the threat of death. "No, it's you who should leave." Luo used his only hand to push Swain away with difficulty. In his opinion, Bullet and Blackbeard have joined forces, and with Swain's strength, there is not much chance of winning. He even witnessed with his own eyes how powerful Big Mom could not hold out for long before being defeated by their joint attack. Swain's heart was filled with emotion. Only in adversity can we truly see true love. He knew that Luo made such a decision out of concern and protection for him. "I said, I will take you away, no one can stop me," Swain said domineeringly, with firmness and confidence in his voice. "Can you stop yourself from being injured now?" Swain asked with concern. Luo nodded with difficulty, indicating that he could temporarily stop the injury. Subsequently, Swain showed his ability without hesitation. He sealed the area within a few meters of where Luo was with seawater. This seawater contains his powerful domineering energy, which is difficult for ordinary people to break through. Swain's eyes shone with determination, and he stared at Luo closely, as if telling him, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." In this tense atmosphere, Swain had only one thought in his mind, which was to protect Luo and never let him be harmed in any way. At this time, Blackbeard came here with a strong momentum. "Ha ha ha ha." Blackbeard let out a burst of extremely wild laughter. The laughter was full of ridicule and pride. What a touching ending. Swain was furious after hearing Blackbeard's laughter. His eyes burned with rage. Every time this guy comes to provoke the people around him, Hancock and Luo are directly or indirectly hurt by him. Without his instigation, Swain did not believe that Bullet would have taken action against Luo. Perhaps Blackbeard just wanted to use Luo as a bargaining chip to restrain Swain. "Do you think I can't kill you with Bullet's protection?" Swain's voice was cold and filled with murderous intent. "Even without his protection, can the conflict between us be resolved?" Blackbeard responded with a sneer, his face full of disdain and provocation. "I can only try my best to give the people you care about." Before Blackbeard could finish speaking, Swain flashed to his side. Swain's voice seemed to come from the 9 hells, cold and terrifying. "What do you want?" At this tense moment, the atmosphere became extremely tense, as if even the air was frozen. Blackbeard felt Swain's murderous intention, and a trace of panic flashed in his eyes, but he quickly returned to normal. The corners of his mouth raised slightly, revealing a sly smile, as if he didn't take Swain's threat seriously. "Teach, I don't know where you got the courage, but you will definitely not survive 2 months, Swain issued an ultimatum. Everything around them became extremely quiet, only the breathing of the two of them echoed in the air. Chapter 226 Fierce Fight, Advertisement. "I won't cry until I see the coffin." Swain raised the corners of his mouth slightly, with a hint of disdain in his eyes, and his cold voice seemed to penetrate people's souls. Blackbeard's various actions touched his reverse scales everywhere. In Swain's eyes, if Blackbeard is not dead now, when will he be dead? Blackbeard naturally knew that he was no match for Swain. After feeling Swain's powerful aura, he involuntarily stepped back. "Perhaps we can be true friends. As long as we kill him too, it may free up the positions of 2 emperors." Blackbeard's eyes flickered, revealing a hint of cunning and greed. Bullet's eyes were quite cold. Facing the temptation of Blackbeard, his heart did not waver at all. "What I pursue is ultimate power, not that bad position," Bullet said arrogantly, his voice echoing in the air with an arrogant momentum. Blackbeard raised his brows, raised the corners of his mouth slightly, and revealed an elusive smile. "Of course, Swain may be a good stepping stone." Bullet snorted coldly and responded indifferently. "You don't need to teach me, just worry about yourself, after I defeat this brat." His words stopped abruptly, but there was no threat in them. It goes without saying. When Blackbeard heard this, his face sank slightly, and a trace of displeasure flashed in his eyes. When Swain heard Bullet's arrogance, the corners of his mouth raised slightly and he smiled. "You are so conceited." There was a hint of sarcasm in his smile, as if he was mocking Bullet's pride. In fact, Swain did not show his full strength in the previous match, it was just the tip of the iceberg of his strength. However, he had to admit that Bullet was powerful and this was an opponent that should not be underestimated. But he is Swain, the king of the younger generation. He has incomparable confidence and courage and will never shrink from challenges. The corners of Bullet's mouth raised, outlining a confident smile. "This is not arrogance, this is confidence." Before he finished speaking, he clasped his hands together, and a T-shaped shockwave formed in an instant. The shockwave was like a shining light, with wild domineering energy flowing freely in it, as if it was going to tear the entire space apart. Swain's eyes became solemn, and he could feel that Bullet showed his true strength at this time. The fight just now was just a small fight, but this time, Bullet is obviously going to use his full strength. Seawater dragon roar. Swain shouted violently. He was immediately surrounded by a giant dragon made of seawater. This dragon is lifelike, as if it has life. It opens its teeth and claws, exuding a powerful aura. For a time, the entire space was enveloped by the moves of the two men, and the atmosphere became extremely tense. The figures of Swain and Bullet were looming in the light, their expressions focused and determined, as if they had left the whole world behind. This is a battle between the old and new eras, a battle about honor and dignity. Advertisement: if Swain loses, he will have nothing. Everything he has now will be reduced to zero. Honeycomb Island, Wano Country, Golden City and all affiliated islands will be invaded by others. Bullet's defeat means death, and his myth ends here. At this thrilling moment, everyone's eyes were focused on them, looking forward to the outcome of this peak showdown. "You brat, I heard you were a descendant of rocks?" Bullet asked while beating him. His tone was calm, revealing his strong strength, and he was still able to handle Swain's pressure with ease. Everyone watching the game was in an uproar when they heard that Swain was a descendant of rocks. Blackbeard narrowed his eyes slightly and murmured to himself. No wonder his talent is so powerful. So what if it is? So what if it's not? Swain shouted angrily, his voice thunderous and shocking. For Swain, the name Rocks only brought endless pressure and the fate of being hunted. However, he is Swain, a peerless strong man who is not bound or defined by anything. "If you are really the descendant of Rocks, I will tear your bones apart," Bullet roared, his eyes filled with scary red, as if burning with anger. Swain didn't seem to hear his roar and rushed out, moving forward like a gust of wind. Z. I heard a burst of electricity, and his fists flashed with neatly arranged blue rings, like mechanical bushings, emitting a heart-stopping light. Seeing that something was wrong, Bullet quickly used his defensive skills, Bullet Shell. Purple-black iron blocks instantly appeared on his body, quickly wrapping his whole body like building blocks. This is his unique defense. Bullet Shell transformation. The armed color on the Bullet Shell is extremely thick, like an indestructible fortress, which is difficult to shake. That bullet can not only serve as a solid defense, but can also passively launch a counterattack when attacked. It can be said to be invulnerable. Swain's eyes flashed with fearlessness as he charged towards Bullet without fear. His speed is extremely fast as lightning, and every step carries unparalleled power. Bullet gritted his teeth and resisted Swain's attack with all his strength. The forces of both sides collided together, making a dull impact sound, as if the entire space was shaking. Swain's attacks were as violent as a storm, his fists constantly bombarding Bullet's Bullet Shell defense, trying to find opportunities to break through. Bullet, on the other hand, was as stable as a mountain, relying on his strong defensive skills to withstand Swain's fierce attacks time and time again. The intensity of the battle shocked everyone around him. Chapter 227 Tragic Advertisement. Some people felt that the power that was constantly overflowing was extremely powerful, and their bodies trembled involuntarily, murmuring, "Is this still something that humans can do?" Around them, within a kilometer range, they had been reduced to ruins. The tall building had collapsed at this moment and turned into ruins. Broken masonry and rubble were scattered everywhere, as if it were a scene after a huge disaster. The originally smooth road was torn apart, and the deep cracks were like the mouths of ferocious beasts, making people shudder. The surrounding ships were smashed beyond recognition, with parts scattered everywhere. The doors and windows in the building have long since disappeared, and the hollow frame is crumbling, as if it may collapse at any time. Trees were uprooted, flowers and grass were trampled beyond recognition, and the scene was desolate. The entire area was filled with smoke and dust, making it difficult to breathe. The originally bustling Cake Street became deserted at this moment, with only ruins and broken items witnessing the fierce fight just now. Bang bang bang. Several deafening loud noises suddenly came. Huge dust was raised in the distance, and a figure flew out like a kite with a broken string. Who is it? Everyone's hearts trembled, and another figure slowly emerged from the diffused dust. His body shone with a mysterious blue halo, isolating the dust. He holds a trident, stands tall and majestic. Those blue-golden eyes were dazzling, like endless stars gathering in them, emitting a heart-stopping light. He is as independent as a god-king, as if everything in the world is under his control. Swain. Seeing Swain's victory, Luo felt a surge of joy from the bottom of his heart. In the few moments that Swain bought, the injuries on his body had stopped. The originally horrific wound on the shoulder was reattached to the arm. It's just that he lost too much blood, and his face is still pale without a trace of blood. But the moment he saw Swain's victory, his face showed a trace of blood, which was the desire and excitement for victory. Its body is composed of black mucus and looks very strange. It has a pair of terrifying giant mouths, and when it opens, it seems to be able to swallow the entire world. Its eyes glowed red, like two burning fireballs, emitting a heart-stopping light. C4 symbols formation. Swain's voice sounded, full of majesty and solemnity. This area seemed to have turned into a desolate ruins without any sign of life. Immediately afterwards, 4 giant beasts transformed from the seawater. These 4 giant beasts are Qinglong, White Tiger, Suzaku, and Xuanwu. There are no objects within a kilometer radius, and everything has become food for monsters and giants. He exudes an unparalleled domineering aura, as if he is the master of this world. This black giant is like an evil ghost crawling out of hell, exuding endless terror. This battle was so fierce that it made his blood boil. Advertisement: the clothes on his body had already been torn apart in the fierce fight just now. At this moment, he tore them up without hesitation, revealing the lines of his muscles. Each muscle seemed to contain endless power, as if he could do it at any time. An amazing burst of explosive power. Swain's every movement is full of power and domineering, and his trident is waving in his hand, as if it can tear the void. His steps were steady and powerful, and every step seemed to step on everyone's hearts. The ruined buildings and debris were melted the moment they came into contact with the black slime and turned into nutrients. Slowly, a black giant stood up. This black giant was thousands of meters high, like a hill. As soon as he finished speaking, huge waves appeared behind him. This huge wave was tens of meters high, like a huge wall of water, sweeping towards Bullet. Swain smiled contemptuously and said, "Afraid? A defeated general is still a defeated general. This is a fact that cannot be changed." Just when everyone thought the dust had settled, Bullet climbed out of the ruins. "Run!" someone shouted, then turned around and ran, as if he could escape this terrifying place if he ran fast enough. The crowd was in panic. Everyone was frightened by the terrifying aura of this black giant, and they fled in all directions, fearing that they would be killed if they were spotted by it. "How scary!" someone shouted in horror, his voice full of fear and helplessness. At this time, his face was covered in blood, and the criss-crossing wounds made his face look particularly ferocious, as if he was an evil ghost crawling out of hell. Seeing this, Swain ran away without hesitation, dodging the fatal blow in an instant. "What kind of monster is this? How come its breath is so terrifying?" another person said tremblingly, his voice full of disbelief. Its body was covered with sharp bone spurs, each bone spur flashing with cold light, as if it could pierce the enemy's body at any time. Then, he stepped on it. The giant foot is hundreds of meters wide, like a hill, carrying unparalleled power and momentum. His voice was full of disdain and ridicule, as if he didn't care about Bullet's threat. As his words fell, a Chichi-kai sound sounded, and with him as the center, black mucus began to spread slowly. This black mucus seems to be alive, constantly squirming and devouring everything around it. "It's not over yet," he roared at the top of his lungs, as if he wanted to vent all the unwillingness and anger in his heart. "Seeking death," Bullet roared, his voice full of anger and unwillingness. Only the black giant stood there alone, exuding a heart-stopping and terrifying aura. "Swain, are you afraid of this power?" Bullet's voice came, with a hint of hoarseness in it, as if he had experienced a fierce battle. His tone was still full of confidence, as if he was full of confidence in his own power. "You are very strong, but killing me is not enough." Everyone was shocked by Swain's mighty and domineering attitude. They stared at him intently, their hearts filled with awe and admiration. Chapter 228 4 Symbols Advertisement. The green dragon, covered with blue scales, shines with dazzling light. There are two huge dragon horns on its head, like two sharp swords. Its eyes are like two huge sapphires, shining with cold light. When its mouth opened, it revealed sharp dragon teeth, as if it could easily crush any object. The white tiger is covered with blue fur and has two huge tiger ears on its head, like two sharp daggers. Its eyes are like two burning balls that capture the soul. The Suzaku is hundreds of meters long and covered with blue feathers, as bright as flames. There are two huge phoenix crowns on its head, like two sharp swords. Its eyes are like two huge rubies, shining with blazing light. When its mouth opened, a sharp beak was exposed. Xuanwu is covered with a blue-black turtle shell, like a huge shield. There are two huge snake heads on its head, like two sharp swords. Its eyes are like two huge black gems, shining with cold light. When its mouth opened, it revealed sharp fangs, as if it could easily crush any object. These four giant beasts are lifelike, as if they are real mythical beasts descending into the world. They surround Swain, exuding an unparalleled powerful aura. Their appearance made the surrounding air seem to freeze, making people feel a huge pressure. They were like loyal servants, tightly surrounding Swain, as if they were an impenetrable line of defense. When Bullet's black giant saw this, a terrifying red light suddenly appeared in his eyes, looming, revealing the strong fighting spirit in his heart. However, in just a few days, his strength has increased so much, and he can control it so easily without any hindrance, as if he and these beasts have become one, indistinguishable from each other. These awakened ones have been dominated by the fruit's autonomous consciousness and have lost their original self-awareness, leaving only the most primitive animal instincts. "Swain!" Bullet roared angrily, and the sound was like thunder, resounding throughout the surroundings. Bullet roared angrily, and all his strength exploded instantly. His fists were like meteorites, blasting towards Swain with endless power. "And the fruit he possesses is a god who once ruled a certain era." Suddenly, a voice sounded in his mind. "You are me, and I am you. I will lend you my power and make you the true king of this sea." The white tiger roared in pain, but did not flinch. Instead, it pounced on Bullet more ferociously. At high altitude, Suzaku was not to be outdone. It flapped its wings and set off powerful airflow, forming whirlwinds that swept towards Bullet. At this moment, he suddenly understood why some of the animal-type awakened people he saw when advancing to the city were obviously more powerful after awakening, but they were like dull machines, wandering aimlessly in the prison. He secretly became vigilant and decided that after defeating Bullet, he must conduct an in-depth investigation into this matter. Its huge wings flapped suddenly, and suddenly many huge ice hills condensed in the air. These ice hills are so densely packed that they even block the sun's rays, giving people an endless sense of depression. Bullet's speed became extremely fast, and his violent punch hit Baihu's face hard, making a dull impact. Swain did not dare to be careless at all. He mobilized the power of the fruit with all his strength. Under his control, the divine beasts launched more violent attacks. Advertisement Suzaku nimbly dodged sideways, and the laser hit the ground in the distance, causing a cloud of dust to fly. Bullet was attacked by the White Tiger and the Suzaku, but he did not lose at all. His body flexibly shuttled between the two, sometimes dodging and sometimes counter-attacking. The White Tiger's claws are extremely sharp, and every swing carries a sharp wind sound, while Bullet's fist is as hard as steel, constantly colliding with the White Tiger's claws. Then, he showed the most primitive fighting method, twisting his hands together like a ferocious beast, and charged at him brazenly. At this time, Swain, who was controlling these divine beasts, was no less surprised than Bullet. I remember the last time I used this move was during a fierce battle with the 5 elders. Bullet and White Tiger engaged in a fierce close combat, and each collision caused vibrations in the surrounding space. To be continued. It seems that Swain is controlling these monsters. We must deal with him first, otherwise I will be killed here sooner or later. Bullet thought to himself, with a hint of determination in his eyes. Otherwise, he doesn't want to be bitten by this powerful force one day. At this time, Bullet saw Suzaku in the sky. His eyes suddenly turned red, and a laser of terrifying power shot out from his eyes, like 2 sharp swords, shooting straight at Suzaku. During the fierce battle, Bullet and Swain's eyes met, and it was as if they could see the determined fighting spirit in each other's eyes. He calmly stretched out a finger and probed forward slightly. In an instant, the White Tiger seemed to be summoned. After roaring, it rushed forward with thunderous momentum to kill. A complex emotion surged in Swain's heart, including desire for this powerful force and concern about its potential threats. Swain snorted coldly and chose to ignore it without hesitation. Swain's expression did not change at all. He was like a calm mountain, with the mentality of not changing his expression even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. Immediately afterwards, the blue Suzaku soared into the sky, its body filled with cold air, as if it came from the 9 Netherlands. Flying high in the sky, its beak is like a sword, sharp enough to pierce through space. He understood in his heart that this was undoubtedly the awakening of the fruit's autonomous consciousness. Suddenly, the situation changed and the atmosphere became extremely tense. The uniqueness of the appearance of devil fruit abilities is that no matter what kind of moves, they need to rely on the imagination of the ability user to create them. Bullet has never seen these Chinese mythical beasts, so it makes sense for him to mistake them for monsters. Chapter 229 Victory or Defeat, Advertisement. Bullet. Wolf. As Bullet roared, a giant shadow wolf suddenly appeared behind him, its sharp fangs flashing with cold light as it stared at Swain fiercely. At this moment, Bullet was in the giant's body. He gritted his teeth and once again released the huge surge of domineering energy. "A-hole! I will make sure you die without a burial today." His roar was deafening, as if he was going to tear the whole world apart. "You'd better worry about yourself first." Swain raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a sneer. His sharp eyes seemed to be able to penetrate everything, and he had already sensed that Bullet's body was about to reach its limit. The lethality caused by a strong bow is indeed extremely powerful, but once the bowstring breaks, Bullet will never be able to regain its former glory. Obviously, in order to put Swain to death, Bullet was serious this time. However, the outcome of this thrilling battle is still uncertain. Until the last moment, no one can predict whether Bullet can turn defeat into victory, and who will be the first to throw out the king bomb that determines the outcome and reveal the final trump card. The wolf was as fast as lightning, running wildly in just a few steps and arriving in front of Swain like a whirlwind. At the same time, Suzaku and White Tiger were tightly entangled by the giant and could not escape to defend themselves. Upon seeing this, Xuanwu immediately flew over desperately, trying to block Swain. However, its power is limited after all, and it is difficult to withstand the ferocious attack of the evil wolf. After all, these mythical beasts are all transformed from seawater. Their attacks are acceptable, but their defensive power pales in comparison. They have no special abilities possessed by the original mythical beasts. Just when the extremely ferocious wolf was about to open its bloody mouth and swallow Swain in one gulp, Swain suddenly shouted, "Blue Dragon Body Protector." Roar. Along with a roar that shook the world, the blue light on Xinglong suddenly became more dazzling. It was like a blue whirlwind, quickly surrounding Swain and protecting him closely. When Bullet saw this, his heart sank. He knew how powerful this dragon was. Swain poured domineering energy into it, almost turning it into black. It was not easy to break through the green dragon's defense. However, he did not back down and drove the wolf to launch an even more ferocious attack. The wolf's sharp claws flashed with cold light in the air, and each swing brought up a strong wind that roared towards Swain. Swain dodges flexibly while condensing powerful energy balls in his hands and slamming them at the wolf. The energy balls drew gorgeous trajectories in the air, colliding with the wolf's attacks, making bursts of earth-shaking loud noises. On the battlefield, the atmosphere was extremely tense, as if even the air had solidified. The fierce battle between the two sides intensified, and no one was willing to show weakness. The people watching the battle held their breath nervously, their eyes fixed on this thrilling battle. In this fierce battle, the balance of victory and defeat keeps swinging, and no one can predict the final result. Advertisement Blackbeard and others had already withdrawn from the island, because Cake Island had been beaten to pieces and devastated in the fierce battle between the two. Fan Oka stared at this astonishing destructive power and couldn't help but ask doubtfully, "Where is the limit of these two people?" Blackbeard's face was extremely solemn, and he said solemnly, "Bullet may have reached his limit, but in my opinion, Swain may not have reached his limit. There is only one reason for this. That's because Swain is still young, and he already possesses such powerful strength under the age of 30, which is really amazing. Although Bullet is in his prime, his body functions are certainly not as strong as they were when he was young and vigorous." When Fan Oka heard this, he sighed meaningfully. It must be an extremely unfortunate thing to have such an opponent as an enemy. "Who knows?" Blackbeard responded. Then, Badgers suddenly asked, "Where's Luo?" "There's no need to look for him anymore. Even if he threatens his life, it won't help," Blackbeard replied with a sigh. His usually resolute face showed a rare hint of defeat. Fan Oka gently patted his shoulder and said, "We should go to that place." Blackbeard looked at the fierce battle on Cake Island with melancholy, feeling that the disparity in power between the two sides was too great. "What I accidentally overheard in Elbaf last time, unexpectedly became the last straw," he thought to himself. Outside this ruined island, Blackbeard and the others felt increasingly heavy. They knew that the outcome of this battle would have a profound impact on their future. They stared at Cake Island silently, as if they could feel every fluctuation in the fierce battle. At this moment, their hearts are full of confusion and uncertainty about the future. However, they also understand that no matter what is waiting for them ahead, they must go straight. This is a road of no return and they must face the unknown challenges alone. In this vast sea, no one can predict how their fate will unfold. On the battlefield, the atmosphere was tense and filled with tension. The fierce battle between Swain and Bullet is gradually coming to an end. At this time, Bullet's domineering power is on the verge of exhaustion. You know, the maintenance of the giant form must be supported by majestic domineering, but for Swain who is fighting with him, there is no need to worry about this. As long as he is in a place with seawater, his power seems to be endless, and there is no need to worry about running out. However, although Swain's domineering power is enough to support him to continue fighting for a while, the outcome is actually already clear. Bullet was seen slowly falling from the sky, and his figure looked particularly embarrassed. However, Swain no longer had the initial disdain at this moment. Although the two are enemies, Bullet is undoubtedly an opponent worthy of his admiration. However, Bullet must die, because if he is left behind, he will become a huge hidden danger, and then there will be a lot of trouble. At least among the people Swain cares about, Bullet's strength can easily kill them. Chapter 230 Uninvited Guest. Advertisement. The sharp edge of Swain's trident was mercilessly close to Bullet's neck, and bloodstains immediately soaked his clothes. "You have lost," Swain said coldly, his eyes shining with determination. However, there was no expression of fear on Bullet's face, as if he was not afraid of death. "So what if you lose?" he replied calmly. "Do you think I will surrender to you because of this moment of victory? Will I kneel on the ground and beg for your forgiveness?" Bullet said with a sneer, scanning the opponent in front of him sharply. Bullet, however, remained calm, with a hint of joking in his smile. "Ha ha ha, the winner is the king or the loser, that's the rule. I have nothing to say." Swain frowned slightly. He did not expect Bullet to face death so calmly. "You can say your last words, Bullet," Swain said coldly, having already made up his mind. However, at this moment, an ominous premonition surged into Swain's heart. He seemed to feel an unusual aura, an aura that made him feel uneasy. Swain suddenly stopped and looked around cautiously, trying to find the source of the aura that made him feel uneasy. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared from the shadows and appeared in front of Swain. "I don't need a little devil like you to save me," Bullet said harshly. "You two are really lively." A voice suddenly sounded, like a thunder, instantly breaking the originally tense atmosphere here. Swain's eyes widened at that time, full of astonishment. His eyes were fixed on the person who came, and his face was full of disbelief. "I saw the tall man with bright red hair walking slowly over with a steady pace." Bullet turned his head when he heard this, and his tone was also full of surprise. "Is it you, little brat?" The red-haired man smiled slightly and responded, "Bullet, you weren't a few years older than me when we were on Captain Roger's ship, right?" The conversation between the two seemed completely unrelated to the fierce fight they had just had. However, despite being affected at all, there was an inexplicable harmony, as if the conflict just now had never happened. However, Swain was not happy anymore. He frowned, and the weapon in his hand suddenly moved horizontally, pointing straight at the red hair, with a cold light flashing in his eyes. His voice was low and full of threats. Are you here to save him? Then I advise you to give up. The red-haired man immediately smiled and said, Hey, you have a bigger fork than I eat, so be careful not to hurt me. His tone was relaxed and humorous, as if he didn't take away Swain's threat at all. Take it seriously. Swain did not smile at all because of the red-haired joke. He just snorted coldly and the trident was in his hand again in an instant. Then, he added, if there is a B************ D who wants to kill your companion, I don't believe you will hold back. His words were loud and full of warning, clearly indicating that the red-haired man should not get involved at will. Otherwise, the relationship between the two people can only change from the original peaceful relationship to an unrelenting enemy in an instant. The red-haired man sighed softly and said, this is not good. Advertisement. The red-haired man continued, Swain, I'm not here to fight with you. Bullet is very important and I can't see anything happening to him. When Swain heard this, his brows suddenly frowned tightly, just like the crumpled paper. In his heart, anger began to rise gradually like a small flame, burning more and more. If I hadn't arrived in time, my brother might have died in the hands of this man. The slight fondness for the red hair that she originally had seemed to be swept away by a strong wind in an instant and disappeared without a trace. He never expected that the red-haired man would stand up so firmly for Bullet. This made the displeasure and anger in his heart intertwined, surging crazily in his heart, as if it might erupt like a volcano at any time. He gritted his teeth, his eyes flashed with anger, and stared straight at the red hair, as if he wanted to see through the red hair. This is not the reason for you to rescue him. Tell us your true purpose, otherwise let's fight. Swain has a certain understanding of the red-haired temper. He knows that if it involves harming his companions, the red-haired person will probably do the same thing as him without hesitation. After all, in this vast sea, the meaning of companionship is crucial to strong men like them and cannot be violated in the slightest. Maybe we can still discuss it. The red-haired voice was calm and powerful, as if it had the power to calm the storm. His expression was calm, but there was a hint of imperceptible firmness in his eyes. When Swain heard this, he couldn't help snorting coldly, his voice full of disdain and anger, and said, what else is there to discuss? He must pay the price for what he has done. His eyes were fixed on the red hair, as if he wanted to see a flaw in the red hair's face. The red-haired man was silent for a moment, seeming to be thinking about how to phrase his words. Finally, he spoke slowly and revealed his true purpose. Bullet knows how to activate one of the ancient weapons. This sentence was like a bolt from the blue, instantly exploding in Swain's heart. There was a hint of horror in Swain's eyes, but he was a man who had experienced strong winds and waves after all, and he quickly returned to normal. He knew in his heart that the red-haired man's words would never be without purpose, so this matter was very likely to be true. Suddenly, Swain realized that he seemed to have overlooked an extremely important thing, that is, this guy Bullet had followed Roger all the way to Loftru. Roger, Rayleigh, Bullet. These people, the real strength now is no longer just about strength, but the truth about the world they control. As well as the peerless weapons of the ancient kingdoms scattered on this sea, each of these weapons has the power to destroy the world. This is an experience that even the red-haired man has never had before, otherwise he would not have participated in the fight for the One Piece. Besides, since you are in your current position, you should know about I am, right? The red-haired face became very solemn, and his eyes were fixed on Swain, as if waiting for Swain's answer. Swain nodded slightly, with a thoughtful expression on his face. Of course he knows that I am, the mysterious figure hidden behind the scenes, holds the highest power in the world government. His existence casts a shadow over the entire world. Swain knew in his heart that once I am was involved, things would become more complicated and tricky. He took a deep breath, tried to calm down, and began to think carefully about what the red hair said. Chapter 231. The Whereabouts of Ancient Weapon Advertisement. With your current status, you should have understood part of the truth about this world. The red-haired voice was low and powerful, as if it contained endless profound meaning. Swain frowned slightly and thought for a moment. The originally shining trident in his hand gradually disappeared. He silently comforted himself in his heart. Luo is not dead. The first priority now is to resolve Ain's matter first. So what? Swain's voice was still strong. The ancient weapon that Bullet knows about is in Wano country. The red-haired man's words were like a stone dropped on a calm lake, causing ripples. What? Swain had a look of surprise on his face. He had long heard that there was a huge ancient weapon hidden in Wano country, but he never thought that this rumor could be confirmed from the red-haired man. His eyes were as vicious as a hawk, tightly capturing the changes in Bullet's expression. I was immediately convinced that this was probably true. He secretly thought, is this the reason why Bullet cooperated with Blackbeard? Is it to destroy the negotiations between the Swain pirates and the Big Mom pirates to make them fight each other and then obtain the ancient weapon of Wano? Thinking about it, he felt even more shuddering. If Bullet really gets this power, then Swain's territory may be the first to face destruction. Because Beehive Island is adjacent to Wano country, it is really too dangerous. He glanced at Bullet meaningfully, and then Swain snorted coldly and said, even so, the ownership of this weapon must belong to me. Wano country was once a franchising country not recognized by the world government. After more than 10 years of violent rule by Kaido, Swain finally ushered in the liberation of the people of Wano country. This period of history has left a deep mark on Swain's heart, and he is determined to protect this land and never allow anyone to plunge it into misery again. Swain continued. I will not put the country of Wano in danger again, nor will I let anyone take away what belongs to me. When the red-haired man heard this, his face suddenly sank, and the domineering energy from his body poured out like a flood that broke a bank. That domineering force is like a raging ocean wave, layer upon layer, endless. Under the impact of this powerful domineering force, the surrounding air became thick and oppressive, as if it was tightly grasped by an invisible giant hand, making it difficult to breathe. Swain, however, had no fear. He stood firmly, and the domineering energy from his body poured out like a volcano erupting. The two domineering forces collided in the air, making a deafening roar, like thunder from the sky, shaking the hearts of everyone present. The shock wave generated by the collision spread around like a substance. The dust on the ground was swept up, forming a huge whirlwind that shot straight into the sky, as if it was about to break through the sky. The people around him were so oppressed by this powerful momentum that those on the sea could hardly stand. Their faces were pale, their bodies were trembling involuntarily, and they stepped back one after another, their eyes full of awe and horror. Where does this conqueror's domineering power come from? Such a doubt arose in everyone's mind at the same time. Advertisement. This scene of domineering collision is like the collision of two giant stars in the universe, and the energy released is enough to destroy the world. In this thrilling domineering showdown, Red Hair and Swain were like two unshakable mountains. Their eyes were firm, and neither of them was willing to take a step back. However, the red-haired man's domineering power has surpassed the limits of the world, and seems to have reached a pinnacle that makes people look up to him. After all, Swain was still slightly inferior. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He deserves to be regarded as the most domineering man in the world. Even Swain himself had to give in a little at this time, but this by no means means that Swain is weaker than Shanks. On the contrary, his strength is actually superior. We should all sit down and talk, the red-haired man said solemnly. I'm not here to fight with you, nor do I mean to make things difficult for you. If Bullet doesn't know about the ancient weapon, then I will definitely not stop you from taking action. The red-haired man's words were sincere and firm. Swain knew that the red-haired man was making a concession, and it would be inappropriate for him to be more aggressive. Seeing that the red hair gave him a step, Swain also gave in and said, I want to know your plan, otherwise I will still kill Bullet, even with your protection. Swain's eyes were as sharp as an eagle, revealing determination. Okay. The redhead responded simply. Swain didn't expect the redhead to agree so quickly, and was a little surprised. At this time, the corners of the red-haired mouth raised slightly, revealing a calm smile. The smile was like the warm sunshine in spring, warm and genial, as if it could dispel the haze of the world. His eyes were calm and confident, as if he had everything under control. Swain's expression was slightly relaxed, but his eyes were still sharp, streaking through the void like lightning, making people dare not look directly at him. The surrounding atmosphere gradually relaxed, and the original tense atmosphere gradually dissipated. However, beneath this surface calm, there seems to be endless waves lurking. There is a high possibility that the two four emperors will join forces. Chapter 232, Turbulent Clouds Advertisement. In the ruins, Red Hair and Swain stood opposite each other. The red-haired man looked deeply and said calmly, I can't reveal the plan to you yet. After hearing this, the muscles on Swain's face trembled slightly, and a trace of doubt and vigilance flashed in his eyes. He secretly thought to himself, this red-haired man has always acted mysteriously, and now he is so cautious. It seems that there must be a deep meaning in this. Even a strong man like Red Hair can be so cautious sometimes. It seems that Swain is not the only one who is wary of IM. Anyone who is interested has noticed the changes in world government in recent years. In this sea, dangers and conspiracies are everywhere. Who knows who will be taken advantage of by whom at what time? The red-haired man frowned slightly, secretly sighing at Swain's keen insight, but he still maintained the calmness on his face, and said meaningfully, the human heart is even more elusive. We have companions and family members behind us, so we should always be cautious. That's right. A smile appeared on Swain's lips, and he continued, that's true. No one can guarantee that he won't be bribed by the five elders. Even the clones created by Vegapunk using technological means may be lost under the temptation of the Draco identity and become their accomplices. I have to say that five elders is indeed far ahead in terms of people's hearts. The redhead had reservations about Swain. In contrast, Red Hair trusts Bullet, who is on the same pirate ship, more. You may have misunderstood me. The red-haired face changed. Swain's eyes were slightly cold, and he immediately retorted, so, there is no trust between us, then what is there to talk about? After saying that, Swain suddenly took action, grabbed Bullet's shoulder at an extremely fast speed, and then released a powerful barrier on the spot, covering himself and Bullet. Then in a flash, Swain retreated away from the red-haired bye-bye, meters away. The red-haired man didn't expect Swain to suddenly act like this. His face became a little ugly, and he thought to himself, this guy is really not simple. Things have become difficult. His eyes were fixed on Swain, trying to read his thoughts. Swain stood in the distance and looked at the red-haired man. Among the people wandering around in this sea, no one had their own thoughts and calculations. The red-haired man took a deep breath, calmed himself down, and said slowly, Swain, forgive me for not being able to tell you about this plan. It's just that the current situation is too complicated, and we all need to proceed with caution. Whoever can become the four emperors is not a very deep guy. They all have their own ambitions and goals, and no one can easily manipulate anyone else. But it doesn't matter. I won't talk about this matter with anyone. Swain nodded slightly, stared at the other party closely, and said with an extremely serious and firm expression. At the same time, he placed one hand gently on his chest, as if he were solemnly making some kind of promise. At this time, the surrounding sea breeze was blowing leisurely, the salty sea breeze was constantly surging, and the waves were tirelessly lapping the shore, making crisp and rhythmic sounds. Clatter, crash, crash. This crisp sound seems to add a touch of mystery to this tense and subtle atmosphere. Advertisement. As if he noticed that the red-haired man was still wary of him, Swain's brows suddenly frowned, and a hint of impatience flashed across his face. He changed his words and said, "Actually, regarding the matter of my close companion, none of them knew about this." Spread your hands, trying to show the other person the sincerity of your words. I don't know when the dark clouds in the sky began to gather gradually and the thick clouds spread across the sky like ink. The reason why he didn't tell them was naturally Swain's reason. His original intention was to join forces with Whitebeard, but since he heard that Whitebeard was seriously ill on Danto Island, his originally burning thoughts were as if they were doused by cold water, and he gave up the idea in an instant. At this time, Swain's eyes showed deep regret and helplessness. He shook his head slightly, his expression full of loneliness and sadness. He had no idea what Im's strength was, but judging from the deep respect and awe shown by the 5 elders, he probably has the power to kill 5 of them easily. Otherwise, who would dare to convince him? If his companions Norton, Yishao and others were allowed to go in, it would most likely result in unnecessary high-end combat deaths. In other words, Swain's power was too huge. It took him just 2 years to surpass all the 4 emperors, cover up the flames of the revolutionary army, and once became the leader of the world government, deal with the forces. Even going so far as to launch the biggest buster call in history. If there is no one who can truly support the facade, once Swain falls, it may act like a magnet, attracting pirates from all over the world to come madly to fight for wealth, and even his own loyal soldiers may be driven by profit. Mutiny to join the fight. His eyes became deeper and deeper, like a bottomless black hole, as if he was deeply thinking about the pros and cons and risks, and he unconsciously rubbed his chin with one hand. The red-haired man's face was a little moved. After thinking for a moment, he sighed and said, "You must promise not to tell this matter. Otherwise, we may be fine, but my companions will think that my companions' families will cause unreasonable disasters." Swain was shocked when he heard this and nodded heavily. Only then did the red hair reveal the original plan. Turn out to be. The red-haired Shanks family is very powerful, called the Figaland family. The Figaland family is one of the 19 celestial dragon families and has a very high status. Has the right to judge and execute celestial dragons. The commander of the Knights of God comes from the Figaland family. The daughter of the red-haired Shanks is also a member of the Figaland family. In a later plot, the 5 elders decided to eliminate Uda because she was a bloodline of the Figaland family. The reason why the red hair became a pirate was actually because he was abandoned. He was diagnosed with a terminal illness when he was a child. The Figaland family never collected waste. The red-haired man was considered a mortal, and was expelled from the family on 2 counts of stealing the blood of gods. Chapter 233 The Truth Advertisement. This is why Roger found Shanks in a treasure chest when he was snatching treasure in the Valley of the Gods. However, as if by an ingenious arrangement of fate, these 2 men with compatible personalities met unexpectedly. Shanks' emotions obviously fluctuated when talking about Roger's past, but he quickly controlled his emotions. Since Roger's death, his companions have gone their separate ways, but Red Hair firmly adheres to Roger's will and sails on this vast sea. By chance, he happened to meet a celestial dragon who was also from the Farron family, and the keen celestial dragon saw at a glance that the red-haired man was an outlier in the family. As a result, an intense pursuit began. It was not until the red hair ascended the throne of the 4 emperors that this pursuit came to an end. In the difficult process of exploring his own life experience, he unexpectedly discovered the existence of IM. Coupled with his unique experience of having set foot on an empty island and serving as a trainee pirate on the Roger pirate ship, he successfully understood the profound meaning contained in the 2 historical texts. Among them, what shocked him the most, and what later prompted him to start careful planning, was the last sentence of the text. There was once a mysterious and powerful weapon that triggered a huge tsunami that swept the world, causing people all over the world to the sea level has risen rapidly by 5 meters, and the land has disappeared without a trace. The relationship between the fish people and humans will usher in an unprecedented and huge change. Evil the moon has brought endless darkness to this world. After Swain heard these words, his body trembled involuntarily, as if he was hit by an invisible force. His mind suddenly recalled all the speculations he had made before, and those vague but lingering doubts became clearer at this moment. His eyes were eager and sharp, staring at the red hair closely, and asked quickly, "Does the moon refer to IM?" There was a trace of uncontrollable tension in his voice. The red-haired man nodded first, then shook his head. His expression looked a little solemn, and he said with a deep look, "I don't know who I am referring to yet." There was a kind of helplessness and confusion in his words. Then, the 2 of them looked at Bullet in unison. Their eyes were full of expectation, as if they hoped to get some important clues or information from Bullet. Bullet was keenly aware that the 2 people's eyes were focused on him, and the corners of his mouth slightly raised, revealing an evil smile. He said in a confident and provocative tone, "Want to know the truth? Let me go and I will tell you." Swain sneered and responded without any sign of weakness, You are not qualified to make conditions. HMPH, Bullet snorted, a trace of disdain flashing in his eyes. The moon refers to the 5 elders, he continued, and there's another thing you don't know, I am owns an ancient weapon. These words exploded in the ears of Red Hair and Swain like thunder. What? The two shouted in unison, their voices full of shock and disbelief. Their faces showed shock, and their eyes revealed surprise and worry about the news. For ordinary people, they may think that ancient weapon is just an ancient cold weapon with some historical value and cultural significance. Advertisement, however, for people like Swain and Red Hair, they know the true power of ancient weapon. These weapons have the power to destroy the world. They are terrifying weapons with the power to destroy Kamui. It is no exaggeration to say that as long as you own such an ancient weapon, you will have the capital to fight against the world government. They can rely on their powerful power to compete with the world government and even change the structure of the entire world. At this moment, Red Hair and Swain's hearts were filled with complicated emotions. They realized that this news will have a huge impact on them, and it also means that they will face more severe challenges and tests. The red-haired man asked closely, which weapon is he holding? Bullet frowned, shook his head slowly and said, I don't know, we haven't seen his moves before. At this time, Bullet then said a shocking sentence. In fact, this world is just fragments. This sentence was like thunder, exploding in the ears of Red Hair and Swain. Bullet's words came out one after another, making the red-haired and Swain's faces full of shock, and they felt their breathing became rapid. Swain's eyes widened, and a strong shock surged in his heart. He felt as if he was about to touch the truth of the world. This was a doubt that he had racked his brains but could not figure out. What do you mean? Swain asked impatiently, with a hint of urgency in his voice. Bullet chuckled lightly and asked with a bit of joking, don't you want to be One Piece? This is the treasure Roger left for you. If I tell you so easily, he will probably be angry. Are you alive? Ha 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 ha. Bullet laughed wildly. Swain was a little impatient. The feeling of being sucked up by him made him very unhappy. His face instantly turned gloomy. He grabbed Bullet by the collar and yelled angrily. Tell me quickly, Lousy doesn't want to become One Piece. Upon seeing this, the red-haired man hurriedly stretched out his hand to stop Swain's movements, and said with a serious expression, maybe I can tell you this, it is also the most important part of the plan. The red-haired man's eyes became deep, as if he was caught in a distant memory. If you want to go to another country in this world, you need to take a boat to get there. The red-haired man said slowly, with a hint of emotion in his voice, however, 900 years ago, this world was a whole. There were originally oceans and islands. Actually, they are all on land and can be reached by horse-drawn carriage. The red-haired voice seemed to carry magic, bringing them into that distant era. Swain had an incredible look on his face, as if he was trying to imagine that scene. The red-haired man continued. But in the battle between Joy Boy and I am 100 years ago, someone used the ancient weapon, which caused a tsunami that destroyed the world. The red-haired man's expression became solemn, and this tsunami raised the sea level to a huge height of 200 meters. The red-haired hand gestured in the air, as if describing the terrifying tsunami. The originally smooth world was divided into fragments by the ocean. The red-haired voice was low and powerful. This is the truth of the world, a divided world. There was a trace of sadness in his eyes, as if he was thinking about the once complete world. Regret the world. Then who represented justice in that war? Swain suddenly asked. Chapter 234 Tell advertisement. Bullet suddenly laughed and said, what do you think? There seemed to be a hint of joking and ridicule in the laughter. Boy, I have to say that your strength is indeed very strong. I can't deny this. His words were unhurried, but with an undoubted affirmation. When Swain heard this, he couldn't help but feel a little annoyed, and immediately retorted, do you like killing innocent people indiscriminately like that? There was a little anger and dissatisfaction in his voice. Bullet sneered and responded, innocent? There is no such thing as innocent people in this world. If you want to blame them, they can only blame them for being ruled by the world government. The taxes they pay are all used to destroy kill us pirates. There was a hint of indifference and ruthlessness in his eyes. Then they are my enemies. How can I show mercy to my enemies? Bullet's voice was cold, as if there was no room for negotiation. It's absolutely ridiculous. Swain was extremely disdainful of Bullet's absurdity. He didn't want to argue with Bullet about these meaningless topics anymore. Stop quarreling. If quarreling can solve the problem, I can open a special quarrel venue for you too. The red hair said with a slight sarcasm. Swain snorted coldly, glared at Bullet fiercely, and at the same time motioned to the red-haired man to continue. Seeing that the two of them had stopped arguing, the red-haired man said, my knowledge of this war is very limited. It is actually difficult to clearly define the boundaries between good and evil. I only know that the final result is that I am one and Joey Boy died on the battlefield. The red-haired voice revealed a hint of helplessness and regret. However, judging from Im's actions now, it is obvious who is good and who is evil. His eyes shone with wisdom. Swain whispered secretly in his heart, this man who is praised by everyone in the world as the first pirate. At this moment, Swain suddenly recalled an extremely important thing, that is, the red hair was once responsible for transporting the rubber fruit. No, it should be called the Nika fruit to be precise. However, breaking out of the cocoon and being reborn is the first step to become a strong man, but Luffy has not done this. He is still only a slightly famous pirate, and he is still far away from the 4 emperors. When Swain heard him call him such a name, he immediately understood that there were some entanglements and conflicts between Bullet and Momonosuke's father Odin. Only then did the red-haired man slowly reveal the truth. I originally wanted to invite you to participate in this plan of mine, but things have developed into this situation, which can be considered to be developing in a better direction. The red-haired man did hold one piece in his hand, and he had also witnessed the other piece from Whitebeard. At this moment, a curiosity arose in his heart, so he couldn't help but ask, "Where did you learn these languages from?" At first, the red hair showed distrust of Swain, but in fact, he was testing him step by step. Only then did the red hair decide to cooperate with Bullet and capture one of the ancient weapons to use as a trump card in the subsequent confrontation with IM. Wanting to successfully complete this matter under his control without being discovered by him is simply a fantasy and a fantasy. So, he cleverly and tactfully asked, "So, does Joey Boy leave any inheritance? For example, devil fruit?" Swain also successfully obtained a piece of historical text after defeating Kaido. "I still have some contact with the Figaland family. At that time, Mary Joa, the highest-ranking chief executive, will appear in person to meet with me." Advertisement. The red-haired man nodded slightly, feeling a little surprised that Swain knew this person. What Swain was referring to was the mysterious writing passed down from the ancient kingdom. All the contents recorded in the historical text were written in this type of writing. When the red-haired man heard Swain's question, he looked at him thoughtfully and then replied, "No." According to the information Swain has, since the O'Hara race was brutally exterminated by the 5 elders who launched the Buster Call, there are only 2 people left in this vast world who can truly understand these mysterious words. Indivil. There is no need to know which one it is. Each ancient weapon has unique power and attributes, but they are all inseparable from 2 words. Destruction. Then Swain followed the red hair's eyes and saw that the only remaining building in the ruins was Big Mom's treasure room. One of them is Robin on the Straw Hat Road spaceship. The other one is Vegapunk, who was successfully rescued by Swain not long ago. The strength of the red-haired Shanks is obvious to all, and the strength of someone who can make him value him so much must not be underestimated. However, Swain felt that this person's strength seemed not as strong as the 5 elders. That's going to be difficult. Without Joey Boy's clues, how can we know which ancient weapon IM holds? Swain said, pretending to be embarrassed. Therefore, $4? To be continued. If Red Hair and Bullet want to get the ancient weapon, they must obtain his permission. Thanks to Swain's intervention in the war at the top, Ace was successfully rescued, and Luffy neither lost his partner nor his brother. So he asked directly without hesitation, "What is the specific content of this plan, and when is it planned to be implemented?" Swain knew it in his heart. He knew very well that the Red Hair had originally meant to invite him to participate. After all, Wano country was under his rule at the moment. Not to mention we already have 4 historical texts. However, he had no interest in these matters and did not want to get too involved. Swain recalled the past and spoke uncertainly. "I have fought against him before, and I feel that his strength is not that great." Bullet responded to Swain's question and said calmly, "When he was still an ignorant kid, he learned it from the kimono warrior. And this kimono warrior is Momonosuke's father." "Is that Saint Figaland Garin with the red beard?" Swain asked. This is also the reason why Swain must join the team. After hearing this, the red-haired man raised the corner of his mouth slightly and said with a smile, "Maybe it's just a substitute." After a slight pause, he added, "However, he is indeed the most powerful subordinate under IM. Chapter 235 Planning Advertisement. After contacting St. Gielin, I will use the excuse of returning to the Celestial Dragons to win their trust. You two need to hide yourself and sneak into the Violet Garden in the deepest part of the Holy Land silently," the red hair instructed. At this time, a trace of dissatisfaction appeared on Bullet's face, and he said, "Why sneak in so sneakily? Wouldn't it be simpler to just rush in with a big show, just like what this kid did last time?" As a staunch advocate of violence, he naturally has a soft spot for this simple and direct method that does not require too much thinking. Swain also nodded slightly and echoed, "Aren't the 3 of us strong enough to sweep the entire Mary Joa?" He didn't choose to charge carelessly. You must know that what they are worried about is not Yim and the 5 elders themselves, but the fearsome ancient weapon in Yim's hands. So what if the 5 elders and others are powerful? The 3 people in this conversation each have extraordinary strengths. One of them has a powerful force that can easily overturn the island. The other is the possessor of the most powerful domineering spirit in history. And the last one is Bullet, a companion that even the legendary Roger recruited. Even if they encounter danger, they are confident enough to escape without losing their lives. "What do you mean?" the redhead asked. Even Roger's knowledge of IM-related matters was quite limited. "Will Yim desperately use weapons to destroy Mary Joa? This is undoubtedly impossible, because this natural, God's continent, is an important tool for them to rule the world. The most important thing is that every time he steps into the holy land of Mary Joa, whenever he sees those abominable and ugly celestial dragons, he can't help himself, feels itchy in his hands, and wants to kill 2 of them, free." With that said, the red-haired man took out a blueprint from his arms and unfolded it in front of Swain. "That's right, your ocean fruit is a fruit that has never appeared in the Devil Fruit illustrated book. It is completely different from Nigeria's other fruits. It only exists in historical records. He couldn't help but secretly sigh at the power of red hair. He recalled that the last time he attacked Pengu City, after all the hard work, he only got a small part of the vague route, but the blueprint in red hair's hand was so detailed. The red-haired man's expression became serious. He stared at Swain closely and said word by word, "You two must clamp down on IM as quickly as possible. No matter what method you use, you must find clues to ancient weapon." Roger opened the great age of navigation at the cost of his own life. The remaining matters need to be solved one by the younger generations. However, he did not immediately agree to the red hair, but after thinking for a moment, he raised a key question. Then who should deal with the 5 elders? As for the other fruit, Swain knew without even thinking about it that it should be the dark fruit. The reason why I chose to do this is to ensure that we can successfully obtain truly useful clues, instead of blindly seeking excitement without a plan. The red hair said with a slightly annoyed look. Advertisement. Swain took a closer look and saw that every corner of Pengu City was marked in detail on this drawing. Moreover, this fruit can also deprive the user of the fruit's ability. When faced with other fruits, it is like a hunter facing his prey. People with abilities who cannot use domineering power are completely powerless to fight back. I can do this, but there is one thing you have to help me do, Swain said, holding his chin. That's why I let you make the decision to join. The fruit ability you possess is really special, the red hair said softly. Even Bullet turned to look at Swain. There was some surprise in his voice. Could it be possible that I was killed by you? Swain naturally understood the importance and arduousness of this task, and a sense of mission surged in his heart. No wonder I recently received news about the high-level transfer of 5 elders, saying that Saint Satan broke the law and was imprisoned by the Knights of God. The power of seafloor stone can block all fruit abilities. It would be fine if Bullet was the only one who had this idea. After all, he has always been a reckless man. The red hair almost blurted out the Nika fruit, but fortunately, he stopped the car in time at the critical moment. However, what is unexpected is that Swain's agility and intelligence coincide with Bullet's ideas. This is really beyond the red-haired expectation. Swain looked at their surprised expressions, and even though there was no answer, it was better than an answer. The red-haired man held his forehead helplessly and said to Bullet speechlessly, "Do you know Im's identity?" He looked directly at Bullet. The latter shook his head to show that he knew nothing about it. At this time, Swain touched his nose unnaturally, feeling secretly annoyed and realizing that he had indeed thought too simply. The 5 elders and IM are just humans who have lived longer. The way they communicate with each other cannot naturally be the function of a special race. Although Im's identity is known to us, his strength and abilities are still unclear. After all, the records in the historical text are also quite vague. My fruit ability? Swain looked confused. The red-haired man nodded and replied firmly. Yes, that's where it is. No, it should be called the 4 old stars, Swain said. Moreover, it contains all the breath of the ocean, and is one of the 2 fruits that can restrain those with devil fruit abilities to the greatest extent. The red hair continued. This is why Swain was able to lock Saint Satan up in the first place, but he was not able to escape until a month later. Is the place where I am exists really the Violet Garden? Swain frowned and asked the red-haired man with suspicion. Chapter 236. Reaching an agreement. Advertisement. The previous chapter has been revised. I want you to help me accomplish something, Swain said solemnly. Shanks frowned, feeling that Swain's request at this time was too inappropriate. If he were asked to kill one of the 5 elders who had an enemy with him, it would be absolutely impossible. Just when he was about to refuse, Swain said slowly, "You need to delay for half an hour for me." "What are you going to do?" Shanks asked subconsciously. "I have to try to see if I can kill IM," Swain replied firmly. "You." Shanks hesitated to speak. He wanted to say that it was simply whimsical, but he swallowed the words back. The only one who can influence a 4 emperor's thoughts is himself. If he usually wants to do something, his companions can't stop him at all. This is the difference between a hero and a hero. Heroes can do whatever they want, and they don't need to listen to other people's opinions when making decisions. They are self-centered, act decisively and decisively, and are not influenced by others. Heroes are different, they bear more responsibilities and obligations. As the hero of Marine, Garp needs to obey the leadership of the world government and obey the orders of Marine Fleet Admiral. Every action he takes is subject to various rules and he cannot act as he pleases. Heroes often take justice and morality as their norms, and their actions are concerned and judged by society and the public. Their mission is to protect the weak, defend justice, and strive for a more noble goal. In contrast, heroes pay more attention to their own interests and goals, and they can pursue their desires by any means necessary. Just like Kaido wants to become One Piece, he will step on the people of Wano and squeeze them hard. Their decisions are often more decisive, unfettered by emotion and morality. At this time, in this land full of ruins, Shanks stared at Swain with a complicated expression on his face. Swain's personality is that once he decides to do something, he will take action without hesitation. It is difficult for anyone to make him change his mind. Shanks also knew that Swain wanted to assassinate IM, which was undoubtedly an extremely dangerous move. Shanks fell into deep thought, thinking about how he could help Swain reach an agreement. After a while, he agreed, but he had less time. "I'll buy you 20 minutes at most," Shanks responded. This is the limit of time he can buy. The 5 elders in the Feedland family are not fools. Once they find out that you are stalling for time, they will take action immediately without any hesitation. "Okay." Swain said solemnly. When will we do it? St. Giellen's New Year's Eve party in 23 days, the red-haired man replied. After that, the three of them separated at a fork in the road and went their separate ways. Shanks originally planned to invite Bullet to his territory to catch up with the past. However, Bullet refused his invitation without hesitation. When Swain arrived at the coast, he found that it was deserted, with only a few empty unmanned ships shaking on the sea. Blackbeard is also missing, but what is certain is that he will never choose to sit on the throne of the four emperors. Even if Big Mom is seriously injured, if he dares to show up, he will definitely be killed by Swain and Whitebeard's powerful force group in an instant. It can be said that there is no place for him in this vast sea. He can either join the Revolutionary Army or join the Marines, but these two forces have no place for him. Now, he has really become a street rat that everyone wants to beat. Advertisement Luo was also missing, but fortunately, Swain had Luo's life card, and there was still obvious energy beating on the card, which showed that Luo was not dead yet. Swain stared into the distance, thoughts in his heart surging like a tide. 23 days later, where will this situation go? Still an unknown number. By then, how many people would leave? He had no way of predicting that the situation in this ocean would become increasingly complicated and confusing. If you are not careful, even those as strong as the four emperors may fall. After all, even Saint Satan, one of the 5 most powerful people in the world, has fallen, so who else is impossible to die? So one wrong step could lead to the death of tens of thousands of people. This is not a game, this is real life. One general will make all the bones wither. Swain found a wooden board from the shore, then stepped on it and headed in the direction of Luo. However, when he followed the direction of the life card for the 3rd hour, the guidance stopped strangely. Looking at the stagnant life card, he couldn't help but fall into confusion and contemplation. The following is an expansion that further highlights women's agility. Cough cough cough. Luo touched the wound and spit out a mouthful of blood. We're finally here. His voice was extremely weak, like a candle in the wind, but it seemed to carry a hint of relief and peace of mind. Early morning a few days later, Luo was suddenly awakened by several noises. Sister, come to me quickly. A young girl's voice shouted crisply, like an oriole emerging from the valley, full of vitality. Stop it, Zixon, don't disturb that big brother to take a rest. The person who stopped the girl from shouting was a pretty and pleasant woman, who looked about 18 or 19 years old, and was slim. Her every frown and smile reveal agility and playfulness, just like the spring breeze, making people feel extremely fresh. She gently rolled up her sleeves and walked in carefully with a basin of water. After gently testing the water temperature, soaked the towel in the basin. I saw her walking lightly, walking to Luo's side like a deer. Luo's body was in unbearable pain. The injury he suffered this time was too serious. At this moment, he could only barely open his eyelids. The woman carefully started from Luo's chin, and wiped him gently and meticulously, with slow and gentle movements. Suddenly, she screamed, "Ah," her voice full of surprise. "Are you awake?" The woman's big, watery eyes were staring brightly at Luo, her face full of concern and curiosity. What's your name?" The woman blinked her big, smart eyes, flickering like 2 bright stars, and continued to ask curiously. Luo did not answer her question, but instead asked, "How many days have I been in coma?" The woman tilted her head, twirled her fingers back and forth, and after counting carefully, she replied softly, "It's been 3 days." "You haven't answered my question yet." The woman put her hands on her hips, pursed her lips slightly, and had a slightly angry look on her face. Her round eyes stared at Luo, as if to say, "You can't escape my question." The woman's body leaned forward slightly, as if she wanted to close the distance with Luo so that he could answer her question more seriously. Her hair fluttered gently in the wind, adding a bit of playfulness and agility to her. "Today is the college entrance examination day, and I wish all the college entrance examination students that they will pass the plenary exam, get all the marks correct, and be on the gold list." Chapter 237 Village Advertisement. Luo stared at the playful woman in front of him, thought for a moment and then replied, "My name is Zuoyu." "Zhaoyu? What a strange name," she chuckled, her silver bell-like laughter full of vitality. Her eyes were like twinkling stars, slightly narrowed, revealing a hint of playfulness and curiosity. The upward curve of the corners of his mouth was just right, as if conveying friendliness and kindness to Luo. Luo's response was concise and cold, just a simple, His eyes then turned to the side, looking at the cheerful girl outside the window. The girl's innocent smile and agile figure seemed to add a bright color to this peaceful picture. Xylan seemed to be full of curiosity about Luo. She blinked her big and lively eyes, put her hands on her hips, leaned forward slightly, and continued to ask, "Why did you faint on the shore?" Luo's expression remained calm, and his eyes were calm without any fluctuation. His voice was calm and low as he replied, "There were some disputes with my companions." When Xylan heard Luo's answer, her eyes shone with excitement, and her face was filled with yearning and longing for the pirate world. She clenched her hands into fists, put them on her chest, and said excitedly, "Companion? So you are a pirate?" Luo was very curious when he saw her like this. There was a trace of doubt on his cold face, and he asked, "You don't seem to be afraid of pirates?" Xylan smiles like a flower, and her smile is like a flower blooming in spring, exuding a charming fragrance. she said cheerfully. Yes? I admire pirates very much. Just like Lord Swain who helps protect our island. No, there are also 4 kings, she added as if she suddenly remembered something. Luo smiled lightly, with a touch of alienation in his smile. His eyes were still cold, as if he didn't care about Zilan's enthusiasm. Suddenly, the girl burst into the room like a cheerful bird. Sister, come and see, there seems to be a stranger outside again. Are you the village chief's guest? I don't know, the girl replied innocently. Afterwards, Zilan confessed to Luo and hurriedly left the room, her steps as light as a dancing butterfly. At the entrance of the village chief, Alfred, was chatting with several burly soldiers. The village chief's expression seemed a little cautious, he frowned slightly, and there was a hint of worry in his eyes. While he listened carefully to the captain's inquiries, he secretly observed their expressions from time to time. It's no wonder that the village chief asked this question, because Swain had actually gone one step ahead of Buggy the Clown and placed a bounty on Marine. The crime was actually colluding with the world government and reselling all kinds of information about Beehive Island. I understand. If you see this person, please contact us immediately, one of the soldiers said seriously. He did not expect these soldiers to actually engage in a head-on confrontation with the generals. All he expected was that they would be greedy for the 4 billion bounty in their spare time. Don't ask if you shouldn't. If you see this person, just contact me in time, the leading soldier said with a serious face. It is true that this bounty order is nothing more than a ridiculous joke in the eyes of Marine soldiers. During those weeks of intense scrutiny, several big families were brutally wiped out, almost all of them were killed. Advertisement. He once heard a merchant who came to the village to do business mention that in the past few weeks, Swain had sent inspection teams to various villages and towns to investigate whether there were spies. Swain's wealth and strength are indeed strong. With this huge wealth, he tried to shake the hearts of the soldiers within Marine. I haven't seen it before. The village chief breathed a sigh of relief and said with a slight trembling. Wait. We suspect you are hiding a spy here. Just as several soldiers from the regiment were about to leave, Xiao Zixin suddenly ran over. What are you two doing out here? Go back quickly. The village chief winked at the two of them quickly. Come on, hold on. At this moment, after learning that the spy was not being protected, the village chief's heart that had been hanging around finally fell to the ground, and he felt relaxed. As long as it's not a local who committed the crime, it won't be involved in any big case. The village chief nodded repeatedly, with a flattering smile on his face, and said, Do you dare to ask all the military masters, is the man in the picture a wanted criminal in Marine? Xiaoxin, don't run around, Xilan said angrily. After all, when Marine executives are in trouble, they often become the most difficult targets to hunt down. At this time, this greed or the 5 billion bounty can play its unique role. The Marine soldiers may not realize that they have become pawns in Swain's plan and are being manipulated by him. There are countless examples of tigers being bullied by dogs. However, this was not Swain's purpose. After all, it is difficult for most people to pose any substantial threat to the generals. Behind this reward order, Swain's scheming and city government are clearly displayed. Therefore, this reward order has become a topic of conversation at best. Soldiers will even use it to promote the generals they admire. In order to argue about who is strong and weak, sometimes they even get red-faced and almost fall out. Several soldiers looked around, and one of them said in a slightly deeper voice, Is there this person here? Grandpa, what are you doing? He cleverly exploited human weaknesses in an attempt to create chaos and division within Marine. Looking at the photo of Luo in military uniform, he is majestic and heroic, which really reminds people of Marine's image. He has been worried that if a spy sneaks into the village, he will be accused of harboring the spy, and the whole village will be buried with him. The intensity of this bounty is astonishing. The bounty for the general level is as high as 4 billion Baileys, and the bounties for Fleet Admiral Sengoku and Hero Garp are as high as a staggering 5 billion. College entrance examination warriors. Yes, yes, yes. The village chief responded quickly, bowing his knees, nodding and bowing. You will be liberated tomorrow. Chapter 238, Quarrel. Advertisement, wait a minute. Lousy thinks you have a spy here, one of the soldiers said with a fierce look on his face. The village chief's expression suddenly changed, and his body subconsciously leaned forward, as if he wanted to step forward and explain. He quietly put his hands behind his back, anxiously and urgently signaling to the two sisters, asking them to run away quickly. Unfortunately, he was still a step too late. The soldier was staring at the two Xylan sisters with a lustful look on his face, while the two girls also had frightened faces and slowly moved towards the rear. This has to remind people of another thing. Before this, the village had always been afraid of pirates outside, because once these pirates broke into the village, they would burn, kill, and loot. Especially those women who looked slightly handsome had no way to survive. They could only be R***D and humiliated and died miserably. They were even deprived of the right to commit suicide. However, since Swain ruled the surrounding thousands of miles of sea, he began to vigorously regulate and rectify the various forces in the sea. Regardless of whether they are bandits, horse thieves, or pirates who are not part of the core, they will not be recognized by him. The newly promoted 4 emperors, in order to establish their supreme majesty, ordered all the above forces to abandon their camps on their own. But these stubborn forces, relying on the extreme remoteness of their location, did not take this order seriously at all, and still went their own way in front of their mountain kings. How could Swain tolerate this situation? He directly sent the 4 kings to lead the army on the northern expedition. Then, they instantly fell apart like chickens and dogs, completely defeated, and only then did they think of surrender. Now it was their turn to be dumbfounded, and they all yelled that Swain was a devil. Swain ignored them at all and directly ordered them all to be executed, leaving no one alive. In the towns and villages that were originally ruled, after witnessing Swain's actions, everyone was excited and shouted loudly. The passionate voices seemed to break through the sky, saying that this move was very satisfying. However, despite being very happy, everyone is inevitably uneasy in their hearts. Swain's strength is obvious to all. They drove away a bad wolf, but welcomed a fierce tiger. Everyone was worried that Swain's rule would be even more brutal than the previous rulers. However, they soon discovered something unusual. Although the military discipline of these stationed soldiers is slightly lax, they are usually stationed around the island. One of the strange things is that they changed the official name of the village chief and called him Village Committee Secretary. Although it was difficult for everyone to change their words for a while, they still used to call him Village Chief. Advertisement in the next 2 years, the military discipline of the soldiers stationed there gradually improved, and batches of soldiers came and went. Although there is little communication between villagers and soldiers, they have a clear understanding of each other and lead peaceful lives without disturbing each other. However, things have changed in recent months. The discipline of the soldiers became worse and worse, and heinous incidents of and murder even occurred. This incident plunged the villagers into extreme panic. At first, some people had doubts about whether this abominable act was carried out by soldiers of the core. They were not convinced until a living victim woman returned to the village. The leading soldier frowned and shouted loudly, "Come back quickly, don't break military discipline." He knew in his heart that he had been unable to control this soldier recently. This soldier is extremely powerful, far superior to the commander, and he is also a well-connected person with a good background. His father was a brigade commander in the corps, and he was sent here because he committed some crimes. At this time, the soldier was saying to the commander with disdain, "Sir, look at these poor and humble civilians. We are guarding them for no reason. Shouldn't we charge them something extra?" "What do you mean?" The soldier commander stared at him with cold eyes and a majestic tone. "Ruskin, have you forgotten the discipline of the army?" Seeing how ignorant he was, the soldier couldn't help but angrily yelled. Ruskin suddenly burst out laughing, his face full of ridicule. "What bullshit discipline, it's just the rules of the game set by the top management. Now, get away from those 2 girls immediately," the soldier commander shouted in anger. Ruskin turned a deaf ear to the commander's orders and still went his own way. The village chief saw them arguing and took them away quickly while they were not paying attention. "You are really extremely bored, don't you know it clearly?" Ruskin's eyes widened angrily, veins popped out on his forehead, he pointed at the soldier commander, his sinister voice was mixed with undisguised disgust. "From the day I stepped into this team, you have endlessly instilled in me the so-called 10 bullshit disciplines. This is a task assigned to me by the superiors, and I must go all out to complete it." The soldier commander straightened his body, crossed his arms, looked directly at Ruskin without flinching, and spoke in a firm and decisive tone. "Arrangements from the top? My father specifically asked you to take more care of me, but you have repeatedly opposed me." Ruskin sneered, his eyes full of resentment. As he spoke, he patted me hard, palm. "I have principles that I stick to." The soldier took a step forward and shouted loudly, his voice revealing unquestionable determination. "Well, I also have principles that I cannot violate." Ruskin's voice became sharper and filled with anger. His fists were clenched, and his joints were white from the exertion. "Suffer death." Ruskin's roar was like thunder, exploding in the air. He raised his fist and was about to rush towards the soldier commander. The soldier commander immediately counterattacked, but there was still a slight gap in strength between the two, and he couldn't stop them. He severely injured the soldier commander with one punch, and then followed their footsteps to find them. Chapter 239. Saving Beauty Advertisement. "Sister, come here quickly." The girl grabbed Zillan's hand in panic and shouted loudly. "You just stay here, you know, I'm going to help Grandpa." There was a hint of determination in Zillan's voice, and her eyes were full of worry. "This cellar is very hidden. The space inside is cramped and can only accommodate about 5 people. It also stores some small amounts of food. Remember, don't move. No matter what noise you hear, you are absolutely not allowed to come out, let alone cry." Zillan held the girl's hand tightly and warned solemnly, with a faint hint of sadness in her voice. "Shudder." "I know." The girl's voice trembled slightly, her big eyes full of fear and anxiety. Zillan looked at the girl, feeling sad in her heart, but she knew that now was not the time to be sad. She took a deep breath, turned and left. However, when she just ran out, the scene in front of her made her heart feel like it was falling into an ice cellar. The village chief's head was held tightly in Ruskin's hand, while Grandpa's body fell into a pool of blood. The blood flowed all over the ground, as if it had merged into a scarlet stream. Ruskin stood next to his grandfather's body. His face was full of ferocity and cruelty, and his eyes were like demons, which made people shudder. Zillan's mind went blank. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Grandpa is her only relative in the world and her spiritual support. She thought of her grandfather's love and care for her, and those warm memories flooded into her heart. Her heart was filled with sadness and anger. Sadness was like raging waves, beating her heart mercilessly, while anger was like a burning flame, burning every inch of her skin. At this time, Zillan's body seemed to have been drained of strength, her legs were weak, and she could not help but tremble. Her lips were bloodless and frighteningly pale, as if they had lost all life. Her eyes were red, and her tears kept rolling down like broken beads. Each teardrop seemed to carry her endless sorrow and pain. Her cries became more and more sad, echoing in this silent space, making her feel sad. People were heartbroken after hearing this. Ruskin looked at Zillan, with a ferocious smile on his face, and his laughter echoed in the air, which was creepy. Zillan clenched her fists tightly, with only one thought in her mind: revenge for her grandfather. His arrogant father is the brigade commander of the Legion. If he hadn't taken his promotion into consideration, how could he have been sent to serve in such a useless place? Get your dirty mouth away. When Ruskin saw his prey suddenly disappear, he became furious and searched everywhere. Zillan struggled hard under Ruskin's body, and her tears poured out like a flood. At this time, she was completely devastated. The next moment, Zillan felt herself being tightly embraced by warm and powerful arms. She slowly opened her eyes, and what came into view was the wounded person she rescued, Luo. She slapped him hard with all her strength. However, there was no fear in Luo's eyes, and his voice was as cold as ice. You really deserve to die. To be continued. Her petite body seemed so insignificant in the arms of the tall and strong Ruskin. Ruskin possesses the strong strength of Marine Lieutenant Junior grade, not Marine Lieutenant General. How can an ordinary and weak woman like Zillan be his opponent? Advertisement. His eyes were full of teasing and ridicule. The little girl is quite smart. She actually took the initiative to throw herself into my arms, unlike this bad old man who only knew how to stop me. Ruskin let out a creepy and weird laugh. Her fist, as slender as an embroidery needle, hit Ruskin's broad chest, but it was like hitting a hard steel plate. Not only did it not cause any harm to Ruskin, it actually caused her immense pain. He thoroughly enjoyed the process of humiliating the weak, with a proud face on his face, and thought to himself, this is the treatment of the strong, and the Zillan in front of him is just a piece of fish and meat to be slaughtered. Ha ha ha. I really like his strong temper. Ruskin's tone was frivolous and presumptuous. Zillan struggled desperately, but was still unable to break free. Her feet kept kicking Ruskin's feet, but the latter seemed to have no feeling. You. Ruskin looked at Luo in horror, finally realizing what a terrifying existence he had provoked. Finally, it's my turn to fight back. Ruskin viciously put Zillan to the ground and frantically began to tear off her tops one after another. When Zixan saw that her sister was safe and sound, she was so excited that she cried instantly. Ruskin suddenly hugged her tightly into his arms, his thick hands groping randomly on her body. Revenge. She stepped forward and rushed towards Ruskin regardless of her own safety. At this time, Zillan was so small and weak in front of Ruskin. At the critical moment, I heard an angry shout, "Room!" Pa! A crisp slap echoed in the air. Luo's face was slightly pale, which was due to the low blood volume in his body. It was obvious that his injury had not yet healed. But his eyes were firm and cold, as if he was a savior coming from hell. Her strength is very weak, even resistance seems so weak. His pale face was filled with fear and despair, and his eyes were filled with tears, but he tried not to let them fall. His lips trembled slightly, not knowing that it was the sadness of his grandfather's death. It turns out that pirates are all such beasts. The admiration for free men on the sea has now turned into endless fear and resentment. She was desperate and prepared to bite her tongue and commit suicide to protect her innocence. Ruskin's heart suddenly appeared in Luo's hand, as if by magic. Damn it! Who is your kid? Zillan shouted angrily. Go to hell. If it had been a month ago, I would have pushed you to the ground and conquered you to your heart's content. However, at this moment, I prefer women who are submissive and cater to me. How dare you snatch my wife from you? Are you tired of living? Ruskin was furious and yelled. No need for unnecessary nonsense, Luo thought silently in his heart, and instantly a mysterious circle appeared, covering Ruskin. Chapter 240 Revenge Advertisement. You are. Ruskin suddenly felt that the person in front of him looked familiar. He stared at him closely with a puzzled look on his face. Then, he nervously took out the photo from his arms and compared it carefully. The person in the photo looks almost exactly the same as the person in front of me, except that they don't have that heroic spirit. He muttered to himself, could this really be? He naturally understood who the person in the photo was, and it was understandable that the village chief didn't know. After all, there was no Luo in the village. The reward order and photos naturally did not know that Luo was the famous Four Kings. His Highness the King of the West. Ruskin's voice almost trembled when he said these words, completely losing the air he had just now, and there was even a thin layer of sweat on his forehead. Luo Yi changed his position and came to him, and asked with sharp eyes, "Whose subordinate are you? Why? Why do you want to kill this villager?" There was a hint of majesty in Luo's voice. Ruskin's face became a little pale. He lowered his head, not daring to look at Luo, and replied hesitantly, I suspect there is a spy here." His voice was very low, as if I was afraid that I would offend Luo. When facing civilians, he can still act like a strong man and act aloof, but he knew very well that he was so small in this corps with so many strong men. Perhaps, any guard on Honeycomb Island could easily defeat him. When the 5 elders brought Buster Call to Beehive Island, he hid on the island behind and did not dare to go out. Therefore, he could only stay in this remote and underdeveloped area, which was also the safest place. The 3 islands including Beehive Island are like a barrier, keeping these sheltered islands behind. Ruskin didn't dare to continue. "Speak quickly," Luo scolded. This scolding sounded in Ruskin's ears like thunder. His body trembled involuntarily, and a look of horror appeared on his face. "I suspect there is a spy here." Ruskin raised his head with some fear, looked at Luo, and quickly explained, No. Of course I wouldn't dare. Even if you gave me 100 courages, I wouldn't dare. I suspect His Highness." He waved his hands innocently, his eyes full of fear and anxiety. "Prince Ming's reputation was lost to you, scum." Luo's eyes revealed anger, and his voice unconsciously rose a lot. Ruskin lowered his head and did not dare to speak anymore. "You know, as long as Swain is not at home, it is almost always Luo who helps him govern and manage this affiliated territory with a population of nearly several countries. From time to time, he encountered riots in his affiliated territories, and at first he intuitively believed that world government spies were causing trouble. For this reason, he specially sent officials to conduct an in-depth investigation, but he did not expect that an unhealthy trend of deceiving the subordinates and concealing the superiors had already formed here. In desperation, he had to dispatch the army to suppress it forcefully. At this moment, he finally fully understood why there were always people who took the lead in creating riots. In the final analysis, it was because they could no longer survive. Ruskin deeply realized the resolute kingly spirit released by Luo. After all, his legs could not support him, and he fell to his knees with a pop. "My father is the brigade commander of the Nanwang. You are so noble, and I beg you to let me go." He was already crying profusely at this time, and his nose and tears were flowing out like a torrent of bursting embankments. At the same time, he cried sadly, said, "Should I let you go? Then why don't you let this old man let go?" Luo's eyes were full of anger. His arm pointed stiffly at the old village chief whose head had been placed by Xylan, and there was a hidden meaning in his words. Majesty. He knew in his heart that if he tolerated Ruskin today, there would be many people like Ruskin showing up in the future. Then he gave his heart to Xylan and asked her to avenge her relatives with her own hands. Xylan has never killed a chicken in her life, but now she wants to kill someone. Advertisement, but there were fireworks of determined hatred in her eyes. Don't. Ruskin didn't want to die yet, peeved. Xylan crushed his heart and burst into tears, dividing line. Today is June 9, 2024 at 23:26. The college entrance examination has finally come to an end. I would like to take this opportunity to express my feelings. First of all, congratulations to the students who participated in this college entrance examination. You will receive a 3-month vacation reward. Secondly, don't be wrong about the answers and enjoy the 2 weeks without results. This will be the most relaxing day for you. As a former participant, I also have a lot of emotions. High school was the most painful, confusing and helpless time for me. However, after graduation, I often miss my high school life. I miss those years of pure friendship. I miss those days when the teacher chased me to answer questions. I miss those days when my friends and I went to the internet bar after the rain. I miss the girl who brought me meals and selflessly encouraged me to help me. These will be your precious youth. There is a sentence in Disqualification in the world. If you can avoid violent joy, there will naturally be no sadness. Ignorant love is like 2 children learning to walk at the same time, supporting each other, but as long as one person falls to the ground, both of them will fall to the ground. So this relationship naturally broke up, but she left a deep impression on me, and even affected my high school career. Even if I give up on the best girl, I will always regret it when I look back now. What I want to say is, after the college entrance examination, confess your love when you should, and don't leave any regrets for your youth. If you really can let go, you must also learn to let go. Bai Yu Guang's love will stay in your memory forever. In the memory, she is always beautiful, always with a cute ponytail, her eyes are always clear, always bright and innocent, always warm and sincere. She is standing there. The breeze blows a corner of her white dress. She is standing there, smiled and waved to me. She was standing there, standing in my 18-year-old dream. That person lives in time forever. You can't pull her out, and you can't go back. Just let her stay there quietly. She will not gain weight or grow old. She will not wear professional suits and high heels, and she will not smell like a family member. She will always be young and beautiful, standing in the memories wearing a bright long dress, smiling at you like a flower. Chapter 241. Searching for someone advertisement. Don't be sad. Luo said softly. There was a trace of imperceptible nervousness on his clear-cut face. Yes, he was not good at comforting women. Even though he thought about it over and over in his heart for a long time, he could only formulate such a simple and plain sentence in the end. Zilan slowly raised her head, her beautiful eyes already wet with tears and became tearful. She looked straight at Luo and asked softly, "He is a pirate, right?" Luo's eyes were firm and decisive. Without any hesitation, he answered resolutely, "No, that's a marine spy." It was as if this answer had already been determined in his mind. Zilan nodded slightly, as if trying to understand the answer. She silently approached Luo's pants and gently wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes, as if at this moment, Luo gave her a faint hint of support. However, at that moment, Luo's eyes suddenly went dark, his body fell back involuntarily, and then he fainted. When he opened his eyes again, 2 days had passed quietly. He slowly looked around and found that he was still in the small room where he first woke up. Nothing has changed, a familiar breath fills the air. "Are you awake?" Zilan's voice was full of surprise, and her eyes shone with joy. Luo said, softly, with a hint of weakness in his voice. "How do you feel physically?" Zilan asked with concern, a hint of worry in her tone. Luo tried to move his body, but found that it was quite difficult for him to even stand up, but he still endured the physical discomfort, sat up with difficulty, and asked breathlessly, "Do you have a phone bug here?" There was a trace of expectation in his eyes. He wanted to get in touch with Swain, or at least report to him that he was safe. Bang! With a loud bang, Swain's strong palm hit the desk hard, causing the documents on the desk to tremble slightly. And all the tokens he had on him that could prove his identity were lost. If Zilan, a weak woman, was asked to report, she might encounter the dangerous things that happened 2 days ago. "I realize my mistake," the three of them said in unison, their bodies trembling involuntarily. The three of them felt like they had been pardoned, and they were secretly glad that they were only fined half a year's salary. "What is a devil fruit?" Zilan asked curiously, but at this moment, it was difficult for him to get out. After all, once he left, who would maintain the overall situation? After thinking for a long time, he simply left it to Norton. Although Norton is usually a bit unreliable, as long as he can maintain the status quo and not fall into chaos, that's all. "I can't wait any longer. I have to start preparing the red-haired plan." Swain clenched his fists tightly with a firm expression on his face, secretly making up his mind. He deeply understood the urgency of time and could no longer let the search for Luo delay the process too much. "Haven't you found it yet?" His voice exploded in the room like thunder, full of majesty and anger. Luo keenly caught the change in her expression. A trace of concern flashed in his eyes, and he replied softly, "I am a devil fruit user." Advertisement between the questions and answers, Zilan's expression gradually relaxed, and an imperceptible smile appeared on Luo's face. The atmosphere between the two became more and more harmonious, as if they had forgotten everything around them. However, he still sent the Red Earl to pay close attention to their every move. A trace of helplessness flashed in Zilan's eyes. She shook her head gently and replied, "We don't have phone bugs here. News can only be delivered through letters." "Not famous." Luo frowned slightly, his tone was calm, and there was a trace of indifference in his eyes. "What's the point of raising you wastes?" Swain's roar sounded again, his eyes widened as if they were about to spit out fire. From time to time, he took out Luo's life paper and looked at it carefully, as if that thin piece of paper was the most precious thing in his life. After others left, Swain kept pacing in the office. His forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat, and the look of worry on his face never stopped. He was afraid that the paper would suddenly burn in the next second, which would mean something bad happened to Luo. Since Big Mom couldn't regain her strength for a while, and Whitebeard was being rescued by Vegapunk, the red-haired man went with him to deal with IM. In this vast sea, the only ones who can wipe out Swain's forces in a short period of time are the Revolutionary Army and Marine. As long as this piece of paper is still there, he firmly believes that Luo is still alive. When Luo heard this, his expression turned dark. He knew that his injury had not yet healed and it would not be easy to go back. "How did you do that?" There was a trace of hesitation on Zilan's face. She clenched the corners of her clothes tightly, and her throat rolled, as if she was trying to suppress something. Then he explained the origin and characteristics of devil fruit to her in detail. His expression was serious and focused, as if he was telling a mysterious and wonderful story. Originally, he planned to entrust Yishao to handle the matter, but considering Yishao's inconvenience as a blind person, he finally decided to leave it to Norton. Luo took a deep breath and tried to keep his voice as calm as possible. He knew that Zilan was communicating with himself to restrain his grief for the death of his relatives. After everything was arranged, he resolutely left Beehive Island and set off for Wano country. He is determined to find out the secret hidden by the ancient weapon. At the beginning, they had sworn to Swain that if they couldn't find anyone, they would come and see him. Now that things are messed up, I'm lucky to be able to save my life. Then he waved his hand and asked them to leave. No. The three people kneeling below lowered their heads and replied with trembling voices. "How many days has it been? What kind of past did you want that I didn't give you?" His tone became more and more severe, and the atmosphere in the room became extremely tense. "Marine. Thinking of this, he did feel a little headache. Obviously, she wanted to say the word, heart, but the horrific scene brought back disgusting memories. Swain snorted angrily, each person will be fined half a year's salary. You should be a famous pirate. Xylan blinked her big, watery eyes and asked with curiosity on her face. Chapter 242 Hihei Advertisement. The moment Swain stepped into Wano country, he noticed that earth-shaking changes had taken place here. The last time I came here was half a year ago. Thanks to policy trends, there are no longer sewage flows and food shortages here. Who? The guard at the port shouted loudly, with a hint of nervousness and caution in his voice. Due to the distance, they only saw a blurry figure gradually approaching, unable to see clearly the true appearance of the person coming. When Swain approached, the guards' faces instantly turned pale, and their bodies began to tremble involuntarily. Their eyes widened in horror, and their eyes were full of horror. They quickly knelt down and saluted, and said in a trembling voice, Your Majesty. Your Majesty, please forgive me, I was blind and couldn't see clearly that it was you. Swain's steps were steady and firm, and every step seemed to carry heavy majesty. His eyes were as sharp as a falcon, and he swept across the faces of the guards coldly, causing them to lower their heads and not dare to look at him. The guards' heartbeats accelerated rapidly, as if they could hear their own hearts beating crazily in their chests. Beads of sweat appeared on their foreheads and slid down their cheeks, bringing a chill. Their lips trembled slightly, wanting to say something to calm the Emperor's anger, but they were afraid that their words would anger Swain even more. His hands were clasped together tightly, and his nails dug deeply into his palms, but he felt no pain at all. Under Swain's powerful majesty, the bodies of the guards became stiffer and stiffer, as if they might collapse to the ground at any time. They secretly prayed that the Emperor would be punished leniently, and their hearts were filled with regret and fear for their previous collision. In the end, Swain just waved his hand and said, I have something to do here. Seeing that the Emperor was not angry, he felt as if he was being pardoned. Maybe even Swain didn't realize that he had been in a high position for a long time, and his eyes were very majestic. Do you need us to inform you of Kinemon's name? Since Swain came to Wano country, he naturally had to find Kinemon, the supreme commander of Curry. Well, let him come over to see me, Swain said calmly. He knew very well that if he wanted to know the secrets of Wano, he would naturally have to ask the older generation. After a while, Kinemon came trotting over in military uniform. I'm so sorry, Lord Swain, I'm a step late, Kinemon said with heavy breath. Swain chuckled and said, You are really busy today. Yeah, but it's good to be busy, lest I do something that harms the people again. Kinemon scratched his head and said with a smile. The word, mass, was first introduced by Swain, and later became popular in Wano. I wonder what you want from me. Do you know the history of this country? Swain asked. Kinemon replied confidently. This is natural. I am a native of Wano. That's good. I remember you used to be Kazuki Oden's subordinate. Kinemon replied. Yes. He secretly wondered what Swain's intention was in mentioning this matter at this time. Don't be nervous, I just want to ask, do you know about ancient weapon? Swain said straightforwardly. After saying that, he carefully observed Kinemon's expression. However, the result made him greatly disappointed, because Kinemon's expression did not change at all. What is an ancient weapon? Nothing, it seems you don't know much. Advertisement, you can think about it. Has Oden told you anything related to it? Swain asked. When Kinemon heard this, his brows furrowed and he began to try to remember. After a moment, he replied. No, the master has never mentioned this to me. If the young master is here, he may know something. Speaking of this, he looked a little lonely, probably because he felt sad because he failed to protect Momonosuke. Seeing this, Swain patted Kinemon on the shoulder. He didn't want Kinemon to continue to be immersed in sadness. After all, the real murderer could stand in front of him intact. Does anyone else know? If you are anxious to find out, Miss Hiyori may know some truth. But Hiyori was still young at that time. Would Oden tell her such a thing? Even if he told her, he would probably have forgotten it. Swain rubbed his hair and felt that the matter was a bit tricky. He had no clue and no clues. He secretly thought about how to find clues about the ancient weapon next. Swain knew that this matter was of great importance and must be clarified. Then please invite Miss Hiyori to come, Swain ordered. Okay. Kinemon nodded. Then he went to the palace to invite Rihei. In fact, Swain is a person who has no profit and cannot afford to be too early. The original liberation of Wano country was mainly because he had the strength to challenge Kaido. In order to expand his power and protect himself, he had to defeat Kaido. In the final analysis, Wano country is just Swain. Seeing that the people here were really miserable, they were liberated by the way. But this does not prevent him from having a very majestic image in the hearts of the masses. Try to think of a strong man who can lead you out of the devil's cave and rehabilitate you. Who can not pursue him? After a while, Hiyori arrived. Kazuki Hiyori has long, beautiful hair that is as clear as emerald and falls as smoothly as silk on her shoulders. She carefully combed the hairstyle of a noble princess in Japan's Edo period, and every strand exuded elegance. Her eyebrows are picturesque, delicate and moving, like flowers blooming in spring, fresh and graceful. Every frown and every smile reveals a gentle and dignified temperament. The pink flower headdress on her head is like delicate petals, gently dotted in her hair, adding a bit of delicacy and agility to her. And the splendid kimono is like a gorgeous work of art, with moderate colors and exquisite patterns. It fits Hiyori's figure perfectly, showing off her graceful curves, as if it was tailor-made for her. In her body, beauty and nobility are perfectly integrated, making people fall in love with her and be intoxicated by her. She bowed gently and slowly and said, "It's Hiyori's honor that you can come to me in person." Her voice is clear and pleasant, like the running water of a mountain stream or the singing of cuckoos among birds. Chapter 243 Trouble Advertisement. Miss Hiyori is so polite, Swain said softly with a kind smile. Seeing this beautiful lady standing so dignified in front of you always makes people feel happy, as if the warm sunshine in spring is shining on them, making people feel more comfortable. I wonder why you called me here this time? Hiyori asked softly, with a hint of doubt in his tone. Swain winked slightly, and Kinemon understood and quickly bowed out respectfully, knowing that he could no longer participate in the conversation that followed. Miss Hiyori and your father have a deep relationship, right? Swain asked casually, pretending to be casual. When he talked to Hiyori, he was no longer as straightforward as before. The reason for this is that on the one hand, he is well aware that Hiyori has a strong temper, and if he asks directly, she may be resentful. On the other hand, he is also worried that if she really knows something important, if she offends her without her, I'm afraid I won't get anything in the end. My lord, you don't have to call me Hiyori. It's more natural. If you don't mind, just call me Xiaohei. Hiyori said softly. Her voice was like the sound of nature, melodious and intoxicating. Swain suddenly felt that something was difficult to handle. She was really good at talking. Her soft tone and gentle attitude made him don't know how to deal with it. He thought to himself that the woman in front of him seemed weak, but in fact she was very cunning. It might not be easy to get useful information from her. I came here to find you today for one thing. Do you know about the ancient weapon? Swain's voice was low, and his eyes were locked on Hiyori. Hiyori's eyes flickered slightly and she said softly, "The slave family doesn't know about such things." Her voice was as calm as water, as if she was not affected by Swain's words. However, how could Swain believe it so easily? He had just clearly noticed the subtle fluctuations in Yamato's mood, even though she concealed it perfectly. Chi chi chi. Only a slight sound was heard, and a blue halo suddenly appeared on Swain's body. The halo became more intense, and then quickly formed a semicircle with the sole of his foot as the center. This strange half-circle was like a barrier, tightly surrounding the room where the two of them were. Swain's voice echoed in the closed space. In this barriers, the sound cannot be transmitted. His tone was calm, but with an irresistible majesty. Sir. Hiyori was about to refuse, but was interrupted by Swain. His arrival did not bring Hiyori the liberator that his father said could bring people happiness. She understood that what the man in front of her said was true, and that the ancient weapon might really be related to the fate of the entire world. However, when Swain stepped into the country of Wan, doubts filled her heart like fog. Squeak. I can tell you the secret about the head of the family, the one called Ancient Weapon. Today there is a very dangerous person with ulterior motives who wants to flood the entire world with water. I am here just to prevent this from happening. By then, this originally hidden power will become a coveted target. No one can be sure whether the two of them will pose a threat to themselves. Hiyori listened quietly, a complex emotion flashing in her eyes. At this moment, Swain was in a terrible mood. He overturned the tables in the room angrily, and his angry roar echoed in the air. After saying this, she bowed and left gracefully. Advertisement. Even though Swain was angry again, he quickly stood up and helped him. The old woman coughed and said, "I can't bear this." Back in the boudoir, Hiyori sat leaning against the window, thoughts flooding in. She recalled her father's words and couldn't help but feel a ripple in her heart. However, the suspicion of Swain has always been as unshakable as a rock. Really? Although Swain succeeded in liberating Wano, Hiyori was still hesitant to reveal the news about the ancient weapon to him. Because she knew very well the power of that ancient weapon, a power that could drive the strongest men around the world into madness. He was not so thoughtful, otherwise he would have suspected the cause of Momonosuke's death. Since she was a child, her father has told her that if a man who can liberate the country of Wano comes in the future and wants to use the power of the ancient weapon, she must tell the truth. An old woman with gray hair came in. Her hair was as white as silver frost, exuding the afterglow of time. The old woman's steps were slow and staggering, as if every step required all her strength. Her face is covered with deep and shallow wrinkles, like the bark of an ancient tree, filled with the vicissitudes of life. During the meeting with Swain, Hiyori remained alert and said softly, "Sir, I really don't know what you are talking about. You have to believe me, I will never use such weapons to do evil things." Swain's eyes were honest and firm, as if he wanted to penetrate Hiyori's heart. "I came here today to tell His Majesty whether he can pardon my useless grandson." She knelt down and cried. "He doesn't have Wan Lufei's invincible charisma, which can make everyone who sees him trust him." He knew that when the red-haired plan was successfully completed, he and Bullet would set foot on the land of Wano to find the mysterious ancient weapon. It turns out that the old woman is now dependent on her grandson, who was sentenced to 10 years in prison for several thefts and robberies some time ago. The old woman also had a premonition that she was about to leave, and wanted to have her grandson by her side to spend more time with her in the last period of time. Her waist was bent as if she had been weighed down by the burden of life, and it was difficult to straighten up. The clothes on his body were in tatters, dark in color, and patched all over, like traces of time. The threads of the clothes fluttered slightly, as if telling stories of the past in the wind. "Let her in quickly, Sir Swain. I found the servant of the former master of the house for you. She seems to know something," Kinemon said. Suddenly, a rapid knock on the door broke the silence. Swain roared angrily. Get out! His mood had hit rock bottom. What a hateful bunch of idiots. His voice was full of helplessness. Swain's eyes were as deep as a deep pool, hiding endless secrets. In that turbulent era, the country of Wano was like a trapped beast shrouded in darkness, and people longed for the dawn of liberation. Of course. Swain was overjoyed. Naturally, she knew Kinemon, as both of them were ministers of the Kazuki family at the time. The rickety body seemed to be bent by time, and every step revealed the heaviness of old age.